Ready to go? Over there? Okay. Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of Burnside Council, being the 23rd of November 2021, starting at 7 p.m. We are still seated according to COVID restrictions in the chamber, but you are welcome to join us in the chamber foyer to observe and for public question time. Welcome to all of those who are watching at home and those who are in the gallery. You'll notice that we are all wearing our masks except when we're speaking. If you are attending or intend to attend any future meetings, masks must be worn in the gallery. First of all, please stand for the acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the original custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who have sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. Finally, we seek understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in or visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. In the case of an emergency, an alarm will sound, and then please follow instructions from the staff. I remind you that all council meetings are live streamed through the council's website, and a copy of the agenda is available by downloading from this website. Members are just reminded to raise your hand to indicate when you wish to speak, and make sure your microphone is on when you speak and off as soon as you have finished speaking. I ask everyone here, including those in the gallery, to turn off your mobile phones or place them on silent during the meeting, and a reminder about 3 minutes speaking time for our councillors. To everyone in the chamber, please be respectful of each other and their opinions during these debates and not interrupt the person debating or talk while they are speaking. It's important that all views of the elected members are heard before any decisions are made. All right, that is all the formalities. I'll now move to the agenda. And we have, first of all, let me go back to this one here, sorry. Absences. I have received no apologies. I have no leave of absence. Declaration of interest reminder. Yes, Councillor.
I wish to declare that I was a student of Pembroke School, so perceived conflict of interest, but I don't see that affecting my vote tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott.
Yes, I have an actual conflict of interest, I believe. My wife is part of senior management at Pembroke, so I will be leaving the chamber for the debate. I will stay for the deputations.
Of course, as you should. And I believe there's another one.
Thank you, Worship. Similarly, for item 11.1, I'm also an old scholar of Pembroke, but my perceived conflict really does arise, though, for my enrolment status of my eldest child. We have accepted an offer of admission, so for next year, my eldest child is a student of Pembroke School, so I will be leaving the chamber also, but I will stay for the deputations. Stu.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. I seek a mover. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Seconded, Councillor Davey. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We have no adjourned business, but we don't have anyone asking to speak for public question time, but we have no presentations. We do have 3 deputations that I informed you of earlier today. I have spoken to them all tonight already about the timing. So I will invite the first deputy, who is Grazio Mairano. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, or close. Who is speaking about item 11.2, the Flemington Street Code Amendment. And I believe you have a PowerPoint, so that's going to be organised when you wish that to happen. Thank you, Bronnie. If you'd like to state your name and
Indeed.
not your actual address, but just your suburb. Okay.
Grazie Majorano, pardon me. I'm a director of URPS. We're the town planning firm who are the authors of the Flemington Street Code Amendment and the engagement plan. Next slide, thank you. Next slide, thank you. The purpose of our deputation is just to summarise the objectives of the rezoning. The proponents are seeking to establish the planning framework or the rules or the guidelines for a future development application. There is no development application at the moment. That'll come at a second stage. The application will be assessed by council and by council's planners and engineers. So the purpose of this rezoning is to establish the planning rules. So, for example, we're suggesting that no more than two-storey dwellings will be permitted on the site. Although the synagogue still exists and it is planned to exist, there are no foreseeable plans for the synagogue to be vacated. Next slide, please. Again, thank you. The site, as you'd appreciate, is about 1.4 or so hectares in area. It has a frontage to Flemington Street of around 15 metres. We're proposing to incorporate the northern zone down to the subject site, which is a housing diversity zone. So it's not a new zone to the city. Next slide, please. And again, thank you. With respect to the investigation, there's been a whole range of investigations which are required to be prepared by any author of a rezoning project, either council or the proponent. These investigations were required by the state before we could move forward. So council has a copy, and these are publicly available documents on the Plan SA website. There's a range of investigations which support the actual rezoning concept, and they range from traffic and transport assessment by Phil Weaver, a traffic engineer, independent tree assessment, and your council report notes that there's one significant tree and 8 regulated trees on the site. This rezoning doesn't propose to change the status of those trees. There's also a stormwater management assessment, a utility assessment, a site history assessment in respect to contamination. We prepared a community and social infrastructure assessment and looked at interface issues, and of course the engagement plan, which is mandatory now. All of those investigations, as I said, are available to the public for review, and they, in our opinion, they support the rezoning. With respect to engagement, new slide, thank you. Probably jumped it to, thank you. Part of the new requirement from the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act is the preparation of a community engagement plan. This is significantly different to the pre-Act regarding rezoning projects. In our opinion, the level of community consultation or engagement is significantly more that was typically undertaken by proponents or council under the old Act. So, for example, this particular process has involved our specialist engagement team, consult with staff, preparation of an online survey, direct letter drop to Neighbours. I think we letter dropped about 850 letters directly to residents in the area. Typically, the old rezoning process, council was only required to take a letter drop if you propose in rezoning for local heritage. I'll hurry up. That's my 4 minutes. We've undertaken one-on-one meetings with residents, about one meeting and 170 door knocks. Next slide, please. That's highlighted the area at which we letter dropped, so it's quite wide. Next slide, please. The process, we're about 3/4 of the way through the process. Community engagement consultation ends on the 8th of December. Then we prepare an engagement report, which is public, and then that's presented to the Minister for the Minister's approval. Last slide, please. Just to recap, we are establishing the actual framework for future applications. So, for example, the policies in the in the code indicate two-storey residential building maximum heights. Detailed applications will be submitted later, and council will be the planning authority.
Thank you very much, Mr Marano. I just want to remind members that the last meeting there were a number of attempts made to debate with the deputy. I'm reminding you that that is not appropriate. It is an opportunity for you to ask a question and receive an answer. So if you wouldn't mind just staying there for a few moments in case there is one of the council members who wishes to ask a question. Councillor Davis and then Councillor Henschke.
I just want to say thank you very much for coming, because that's actually very helpful for you to come and present. I think that's a good process.
Thank you.
For planners to do that in future.
Thank you.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you. Have you received feedback from the consultation?
We have. It's supportive. A lot of the feedback was concerned about the height of dwellings, and reassured actual residents that it's 2 stories only. We have received feedback in respect to Flemington Street. There are some concerns about traffic impact on Flemington Street. I met with 2 owners this morning at 8:30, and as I understand it, a lot of the issues relate to the Film Corporation and the Glenside Health Facility with traffic along Flemington Street. Now, part of the new process is that we need to document all of the feedback we've received in an engagement report.
Next was Councillor Dawes. Turnbull.
Thank you for coming in. What are you recommending? I think it's in there, but I'd like to hear it from yourself. What's the minimum block size for the various 2-storey buildings you've got in there?
We're adopting the policies to the north of the site. I think it's the Plain and Cedar Woods Drive. Block sizes will, from a policy perspective, will vary from 160 square metres upwards. There will be a mix of allotment sizes, but the policy suggests down to 160 square metres, which is similar to the density further north on the neighbouring zone.
Thank you. Next was Councillor Carbone.
Thank you. You mentioned Flemington Street, and that certainly is a raw topic in the area. They've seen a big increase in traffic, and they know there's even more to come. And then there's this. So, I mean, we get, hammered with phone calls and emails about traffic. It's the volume of traffic, it's parking, and everything else in between. Did you want to maybe just comment on that, and perhaps what strategies you might have in place to mitigate? I know you haven't lodged a DA yet, but in the future, did you just want to make comment on traffic and perhaps what I might be able to say to these residents when they contact me?
Certainly. Well, the context, as you would appreciate more than I would, the school was there some 10 years ago, so it was a high-intensive use like most schools are. Having said that, the school's no longer there. The traffic engineer holds a view, and his report's publicly available, that the proposed increase in residential dwellings won't have a significant or material impact on actual traffic flows. We're happy to have a conversation about that, but that's what the experts are telling us. With respect to controlling development in the future, council's in a pretty strong position, given you'll be the planning authority with respect to the application, and the applicant will need to comply with the car parking standards in the code, and council will need to be satisfied that car parking and traffic issues are appropriately managed. And if council isn't satisfied, having regard to the code policies, then it's got the right to actually refuse those applications. The 2 gentlemen I spoke to this morning, you might even know these gentlemen, Leon Bias and Ray Doofy, they made it very clear to me that they're keen to have the road widen, and they hold the view that it's a state government and or council responsibility. I think it's based on the issues of Glenside Health and the film centre.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Piggott.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. We've got a draft response to your request in the papers, and I just wondered whether you had any comments on that.
I think it's fine. The draft response appropriately highlights that the zone is appropriate, and when an application is lodged, those issues need to be considered, which they'll have to do in any case.
Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. From your feedback, have you had anything much about retaining the trees? Because I noticed that you have, there are 9 trees on the site, 1 significant and 8 regulated. Did you have any comment from your people?
I haven't heard that. That's not to say that those comments weren't provided. We have an engagement team which manages that. I won't look at the details until the engagement aspect is completed. I'll be surprised if there weren't some comments suggesting trees should be retained. This approach has identified, documented where the significant trees are and where the regulated trees are. The actual rezoning itself doesn't remove those trees, and certainly there are policies in the broader general section of the code which speaks to trying to retain trees.
Thank you very much. Next is Councillor Jones.
Thank you for coming. Now, you mentioned that any planning application would come to the council. That's surely not going to be the case, is it? It's going to go straight to the state government SCAP. We're going to have no say in this development.
I don't think that's the case.
So your development's going to be under $2.5 million for your 60 to 120 houses?
I think this will go to council.
Well, I'll be astonished. We can talk about it later.
Yeah.
Yes. Remember, it says questions and answers.
Yeah, I've got a...
I'll come back to you. Councillor Lemon was next.
Pardon me. The gentleman that you spoke to this morning, can you tell me if they were from Arrow Place?
I don't know. They were from the facility...
On Flemington Street?
Yes.
Yes,
they were.
Thank you. And thank you for coming.
Pleasure.
Councillor Jones, now you can have that opportunity to ask again.
Just on the building heights, you've said it'll be two stories high. I noticed today your company put an application in to build a 6-storey building in Norwood next to the Oriental Hotel, which is zoned for 2 stories. So how do we know as soon as you get the rezoning, you won't just put an application in for a 6-storey building?
The owners have informed me that they're looking at 2 stories.
If there are no further questions, thank you very much for coming in and doing your presentation and for the PowerPoint as well. Very informative. Now I'll call upon Mr. Greg Vincent. And the matter is 11.1, the Haslam Oval, Dunstan Avenue, Kensington Park. Good evening.
Thank you, members, Mayor, staff. My name's Greg Vincent. I reside in Beulah Park. I have with me Mr. Peter Nicolacci, a resident of Kensington Park. We're here tonight to actually speak associated with item 11.1, and in particular the Haslam Oval, Dunstan Avenue proposal for community land revocation of the drainage easement. Now, we understand that this is purely a decision tonight to actually progress to public consultation on the matter. At this stage, however, we would actually suggest that that is still premature. Look, we understand that Pembroke have now gone through a 6-year process of coming up with a master plan for the Haslam Oval precinct and have carefully considered a range of different alternatives. I know that they've gone through at least 2, if not 3 or 4 reiterations of what they would like to actually achieve over that land. Our property directly fronts Haslam Oval. I have a direct interest in the matter, but I'm also a town planner and I recognise what they can do on that land. I'm not here to speak tonight on the town planning related matters in this particular instance, but how we should actually go about the consultation process. Now, this consultation process at this stage, in my opinion, having read all the relevant documentation, the letters of support, the requests that have actually been put before you, do not demonstrate sufficient community merit to actually progress with the revocation of the community land at this point in time. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't going to be some good merit, but I think there needs to be a clear and demonstrated merit to the general community, not just to the Pembroke community, not just to council in terms of the benefit of potentially getting an easement over the top of a drainage pipe that runs underneath Haslam Oval. Now, let's be careful about that. That is not necessarily a direct community benefit. There is, while no easement over the top of that, a potential that that pipe, given it is part of the old Stonyfell Creek network, may well have implied easements. Those easements may already exist as implied easements without them being registered on a title, given they form part of the downstream network of the old Stonyfell Creek. So let's not be sold a pup here. Let's not be given something back for revoking community land without general and strong community benefit coming back to those stakeholders around there. Now, there is significant community interest. I've been approached by quite a number of residents on Gers Road, of Dunstan Avenue and the like, and I know a lot of people around that would be extremely interested in the process that is going to come before you. Now, we realise that we're going to have the opportunity to actually provide comments and feedback through the community consultation process. But what we actually need to be able to provide informed comment, part of your community engagement charter associated with being informed, is making sure that we've got all the information before us so that we can make informed comment. Now, I know that a number of you have actually received emails and correspondence from residents in and around the area today. In that particular instance, that demonstrates the strong community interest. Most of the people there aren't opposed to Pembroke enacting a Haslam Oval precinct master plan. By all means, we would love to actually see the Pembroke precinct, the Haslam Oval precinct, which is privately owned land, we recognise that, developed in a sensitive manner, but having regard to the community's best interests as well as those of Pembroke's. Pembroke are a good community member. They do provide a lot to the community. It's outlined in the correspondence that they've actually put before you. In that regard, it's important, as they've actually stated, through their own guiding principles, that those guiding principles revolve around stakeholder engagement. Now, I've lived on Gers Road now for in excess of 12 years. We've provided advice back to Pembroke when the lights have been on so that they can save power. We've provided our security footage from our CCTV to actually help them retrieve maintenance vehicles that have been stolen from their maintenance shed. You know, we're happy to actually interact, but we would like the same level of interaction and stakeholder engagement with the community that will be affected through the redevelopment of the Haslam Oval precinct. Now, if I may, could I let Peter Nicolacci also say a couple of words? Sorry, it's Mr. Peter Nicolacci, resident of Dunstan Avenue. He was registered on the deputation request as well when it was put through. So, on the outset, we suggest, in the first instance, it's premature to go to public consultation at the moment until we know the true merits, the community merit and benefit coming through. We believe that there is a very strong opportunity for the stakeholders referenced in the Pembroke letter to actually be included. Those stakeholders including members of the community that actually surround Haslam Oval and that can provide a very strong benefit back to the constraints and opportunities in the redevelopment of the Haslam Oval precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. You spoke very well. Now, you said we need all the information. They were your exact words. Can you, I'm trying to understand what, just some examples of information. Are you looking for a construction timeline? Do you want to be involved in the process with the Pembroke School on their working committee? Just give me some examples of what you mean by all the information.
There's several aspects to that, and thank you for the question. On the outset, in terms of the community engagement plan that you actually have before you, there's no information there that's actually going to be told us what we're actually going to be consulted on. What is the information that is actually going to be put out for consultation? Secondly, there's an area there that suggests that this is going to go out to consultation for 21 days in December, leading up till Christmas. We all know that it's been a busy, busy year. 21 days from now, or within a week or 2 weeks from the time of which it potentially starts, is going to lead us right into the Christmas period. I know from reading this documentation, I don't have enough information to make an informed decision as to whether or not the true community benefit derived from the sale and the revocation of community land, which will then facilitate the Haslam Oval Precinct Master Plan to be undertaken by Pembroke, will actually have significant benefit on me. I don't know that from the information that is currently within the report to council at the moment. I think that there needs to be additional information based on what the true community benefit will actually be as a trade-off to actually the revocation of the community land. Understanding that, you know, the drainage easement across the back of the Dunstan Avenue properties owned by Pembroke themselves probably has very little direct impact on myself. It may have direct impact associated with the stormwater network for the people in Dunstan Avenue. We don't know, as I inferred earlier, whether or not that drainage pipe, the 1.2 metre pipe, that is stated within the report here as being part of the Stonyfield Creek network, has implied easements, or whether or not there is a true benefit of actually obtaining an easement on behalf of council in this instance. I know that there's no stormwater drainage network within Gers Road. It constantly flows over the top. You know, it's a historical element through that. So there's those particular aspects that I think we need to actually get a greater understanding of. What is the package of documentation? You know, the council here tonight, I'm sure that if this is the only information you've been provided with, what's the package of information that is going to go out to the community for consultation on? That I don't know. You don't know that. And I think that you would need to know that before you were comfortable in putting it out to public consultation.
Would you like to respond in relation to the extent of, or the time of the consultation period, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just thought it was of benefit to our presenters, but also the councillors. The timeline we've suggested here is, commencing a 21-day process, allowing for school holidays. I've asked my team when that would cease, and the consultation would, at this point in time, would cease in mid-February. So we actually exclude all the holidays from that timeline.
So we're talking all school holidays as well, not just public holidays in that? My understanding is that typically the Local Government Act excludes the public holidays, not necessarily school holidays.
In the report it actually states school holidays.
Thank you. Having a clear timeline would perhaps make it a little bit more beneficial for people skimming the report at the late notice.
Councillor Hubel, you were next. Oh, it wasn't you, it was Councillor Jones. Sorry, I saw a hand on that side. I just...
Thank you for coming. Can I just paraphrase your argument to make sure I understand it? Is it that we can't possibly make this decision until we know what Pembroke School is going to do with the land and what the public access to it is going to be? What trees they're going to cut down, what trees they're going to leave? Have I kind of summarised, without putting words in your mouth, is that kind of where you're going?
I probably wouldn't have gone that far. In terms of exactly knowing. Being involved in the development process as a town planner and the like, I know that there's a long way in which this needs to go. You know, going from a master plan to a clearly defined development that's approved under the Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act against the Planning Design Code is an extremely long process. I'm not here to actually say they need to design this to the nth degree. Okay, what I'm suggesting is that there are particular elements identified through their guiding principles that have been alluded to you within their correspondence that should be enacted upon with a little bit more diligence. When I read particular aspects, and if I flag the URPS report, it goes on to talk about the fact any increase in vehicle traffic would typically be experienced after school hours and on weekends outside of peak traffic on adjacent roads. Having lived there for 12 years, yeah, of course that's going to be the case. We know that's the case because that's what it is at the moment. Haslam Oval, during the weekends, is very, very busy. During winter, 2 football games for the old scholars, sometimes 3 football games for the old scholars after a school game in the morning. Could be up to 4 games on a weekend. I appreciate that. We understand that. My wife doesn't like the language that actually comes from the visitors' bench. I won't say the home bench, but the visitors' bench in this particular instance, which is alluded to right outside of our property, can be quite disturbing to our young girls. However, we know that. We knew that moving in there. What I do need to actually appreciate, though, is are those values truly going to be elicited in any future master plan for that particular purpose? There are quite a number of trees. It's alluded to in both the reports associated with the one presented by Pembroke in their request and in the ERPS report and in the WACS report to the attachments through there. It identifies, however, and makes an express comment that there is the opportunity to actually remove these trees. Okay, it suggests there are going to be some that are going to be retained. It alludes to the River Red Gums along Gers Road, but there's more than just the River Red Gums along Gers Road. There's the lemon-scented gums and there's various other trees through there that are regulated and significant, which will have implications on future development. You can't automatically assume that they'll be removed. That's a part of the development process. Appreciate that. But there might be opportunities where the school can actually come back and actually provide this council with further guidance as to how they might actually protect that, or which precinct of trees is going to be protected by virtue of the master plan. I value the way in which Pembroke are trying to consider what their future growth is and how they'll provide these facilities. What we don't know at the moment is what the implications of those facilities will be. There's the environmental facilities and talk about heat island effect and retaining the trees and the like.
Excuse me, I think we've probably had a really good answer on that, and I appreciate we have an extra
that's
deputation
fine. Thank you, Mayor.
And a number of other questions. So could we, if it's okay with you, we'd like to move on. Councillor Davey and then Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Greg, for coming along tonight and giving us a whole lot of interesting information. One of the things that has struck me on the weekend is from contacts from the locals, is that they weren't aware that this was coming to council at all, and that my understanding is that there hadn't been any dialogue with Pembroke School for over 6 years. Is that so, and how do you envisage that there would be dialogue? Do you envisage there'd be forums with the residents, or what sort of dialogue and community consultation would you envisage?
Look, that is a very difficult question for me to answer. I appreciate where Pembroke are coming from. They've got to go through the process of understanding what they want to do on the land in the first place, and that's going to change over time for that particular purpose. What I think they should be doing, and alluded to in section 3.28 of their correspondence and request to council, is that they need to actually consider, and I think if I read that statement out, it talks about the formulation of master plans, such as the HOP master plan, takes considerable period of time to finalise for a range of reasons. Agreed. Including the need to take into account the interests of a range of stakeholders. Those range of stakeholders, unfortunately, the community surrounding Haslam Oval Precinct has actually missed out on that consultation, and to provide that feedback and the information that I think Pembroke truly need to actually understand what some of those issues are for the adjacent residential properties in there that they might be able to incorporate in and placate a lot of the concerns that might, and I say might because I don't know the full outcome of it at this stage, might be addressed. Now that could be a select committee, that could be a letterbox drop saying, you know, we'd love to hear your concerns so that we can incorporate that into our master plan. There's a range of community consultation approaches that can be undertaken. They've engaged ERPs, a planning consultancy with a reputation for undertaking very good community engagement through the process. There is no doubt in my mind that ERPs have the experts in place to actually undertake that engagement and to propose back to Pembroke what sort of engagement plan they could do with the community.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
You might have seen this document before. And
Yes, it's in the agenda paper.
Yeah, and so I've looked through, I'm referring to the document on page 32. That's my understanding of what the master plan would look like. It includes the demolishment of the houses, and it would consider the removal of the trees. It doesn't, from my mind, it seems pretty clear what trees they're going to remove, and in particular in their paragraph 3 of their letter, it sets out quite clearly what their objectives are, and then in the ERPS report as well, it sets out that yes, they'll be removing trees. Now, I guess my question is, we don't have exactly which trees are going to go and which aren't, but we have a pretty good idea. What further information in relation to this document do you think we should be requesting before you would say we're in a position to go out to community consultation?
It's clear that Pembroke have undertaken arborist reports in the past. They know what the health of the trees are. They know what the tree protection zones of particular trees within this precinct would require. I believe the council should be provided with that information. There are quite clearly significant and regulated trees that are of value to the community that I believe the council should be made aware of in that particular instance. That may well help provide the council and the community with some additional information upon which to make informed decisions through that process. This is an extract, obviously, from their master plan. It's not necessarily the master plan. I haven't seen the full master plan. I understand that the council's been provided with confidential briefings on the master plan itself, so I don't know whether or not this is the whole of the document. I don't know whether there's an underlying element that has some buildings positioned on here, whether there's any greater consideration of car parking on site. When I look at this master plan, and selfishly, you know, the relocated Haslam grandstand gets plonked right directly in front of our house. Yeah. I have a very, critical interest in that particular instance, and I refer to the fact that that grandstand is not just a grandstand, it's club rooms. Okay. It's club rooms for old scholars associated with it. They might not necessarily have a licence, but it projects an activity down through there.
All right. I'll come back to you. I have got one other question from Councillor Cornish, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for coming in and giving your deputation. I suppose, as you said, it's a long process, and this is the first step in that long process, is the consultation of community revocation. And without predicating what if the council chose to go out to community consultation on that question, how often does the neighbourhood actually access these little blocks of community land that we might be looking at? You know, we're not actually at the process of even selling it. We're at the actual process of deciding whether or not to go out to community consultation to find out what the community thinks, to change the land title from community to operational so it possibly could be sold. And that's a separate stage later on down the track, as you said, years away. So what sort of, the community, what sort of access have you guys had to these little portions of community land that you'd not, you'd like to retain or?
Yeah, look, I can't say that I walk on the oval. It's private land. I don't go out there without permission or being invited for that particular purpose. Part of that drainage reserve is contained within the confines of that oval. It's council-owned land, but it's effectively been privatised through the fencing of Haslam Oval in that particular instance. We recognise that it's private land that surrounds that. We respect that. We don't take advantage of that. The council report talks about a net benefit of an increased open space to the area. I would hesitate to say there's not an increase in open space. There's an increase in school grounds being created. might be an open nature by the demolition of the Dunstan Avenue dwellings within there, but it's not reasonable to actually say there's an increase in open space being presented. The triangular parcel of land on the corner of Beulah Park, I don't personally access it. I drive past it, I walk past it, I derive the benefit from it on the basis that it does actually have significant mature vegetation growing within that space. I don't know from the plans that we've actually got in this agenda whether or not there are any significant trees or regulated trees within the drainage reserve land. I don't know that from the information that's before me. I can't make an informed comment on that. If some of those trees that are along the back of the residential properties are within that drainage reserve, then yes, I do derive benefit from that. I derive benefit from the fact that those mature trees are there and that in this master plan they would go. There might be benefit in terms of the replacement trees. That's fine, I recognise that. Trees actually have a lifespan. I've argued that myself on that basis. But at the moment, those trees are there and do provide some level of benefit to the community. And even the regulated and significant tree legislation under the Planning Development Infrastructure Act provides the discussion point in any assessment of the removal of those trees on what is the benefit not only to the people upon the land of which it's located, but to the community in general, to the landscape in general, what's the visual impact and what's the benefit to native fauna. These trees along Gers Road receive significant bat infestations, local fauna, on a regular basis.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, it was on the regulated tree point. I mean, the regulated and significant trees come under separate legislation, so they'd presumably have to get a development application approval to take that over and to remove them. How would this council's decision change if there were, say, regulated significant trees on there?
Well, at the moment, if the regulated or significant trees are on council land, it's a council asset for the same benefit that you'd actually have council street trees. You treat street trees as an asset. Mm-hmm. You treat the trees within your parks and reserves as an asset. If those trees are within these parcels of land, then they are a council asset that is to be valued and to be recognised by the community.
Okay.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. The Planning and Development Code, the Act, PDC Act, so the development application process, is that a separate, the consultation you're talking about is out separate to the Planning and Development Code, so it's before they put a development application in. Is that best practice?
I'm not even contemplating what actually happens when a development application is lodged at the moment. I understand that is a completely separate process. The process that you are going through at the moment is under the Local Government Act in terms of the revocation of community land. Okay? The land has been defined as community land for a purpose. It sits within your community land management plans. It's quite well articulated in the report that's actually put before you in terms of the fact that you actually have drainage management plans, you have pocket park management plans, you have specialised park management plans and the like, and that the purposes are there and identified for that purpose. Would I say that the drainage easements across the back of Dunstan Avenue have any direct relationship to the general community other than potentially what implications they might have for trees? Probably not. They've been alienated for quite some period of time behind the properties and as part of Haslam Oval. I wouldn't use that portion of land as a walkway. It's clear that perhaps some of the failures of past councils back in the 1950s, 60s or the like, that perhaps didn't actually give consideration to the continual movement of the drainage reserve all the way along the back of the properties when they closed Border Street and one other street along, what was is Beulah Road now, when those were actually closed. You know, the failure to actually ensure that that drainage reserve was all the way along, it's a failure of the past. You know, we can't necessarily revisit that, but we do need to give consideration to how that stormwater network continues at the moment.
Is there anyone else who wishes to ask a question? Councillor Henschke, then you can ask a second one.
Thank you.
Just make sure you turn your microphone off.
Yes.
Leave it on. People
Oh, thank you. The strategic alternatives would come out of consultation with the community that you're describing?
If we had enough information to make informed decisions, yes.
Thank you very much for coming in, Mr. Vincent, and now we'll hear from Mr. Nicolacci.
Thank you.
And Mr. Nicolacci, if you just state your name and your suburb, and you understand 4 minutes, there'll be a first bell and a second bell at 5 minutes. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name's Peter Nicolacci. I'm a resident of Kensington Park. Greg gave a wonderful view from his professional background and also as a resident. I'd just like to give you a resident's view if that's okay. So to the elected members, council staff and other stakeholders, we the residents of Dunstan Avenue, Gers Road and Beulah Road, we're disappointed to learn of the plan to go to community consultation regarding the sale of parcels of land around Haslam Oval. As residents, we have been aware that Pembroke School has been working on a master plan since about 2014-2015. We understand that purchasing these parcels of land will allow the school to move forward with its master plan. While these two issues are separate, they directly affect one another and ourselves. We're not opposed to the development at all. However, we do wish to express our concern around several points which we ask both Council and Pembroke School to consider and which needs to be addressed prior to moving to community consultation. At this stage, we feel there's not enough information being provided. Having worked in market research for 10 years, it's all about how you ask the question. If we ask residents what they think of the sale of this small piece of land, they'll probably say they don't care. If we tell them what the outcome will be, I think a lot of people will care. So the concerns are whether the parcels of land are of any economic or environmental value, whether the parcels of land being offered for sale could be offered for sale to the broader community, that the removal of trees within the area will cause aesthetic and environmental damage. I mean, these are home to birds, possums, etc. The traffic issues that Greg spoke about, this will just exacerbate it. The increased sporting activity day and night will be intrusive with lights shining into our homes. The grandstand facing the homes of residents on Gers Road. And, you know, I struggle with this one point. At a time when housing is almost unaffordable for many, the long-term plan is to demolish 9 houses for recreational facilities. Many of the residents of the above-named streets are part of a broader community, a community which includes Pembroke. We are there to assist when students fall off their bikes. We're there to offer an ear when a student is being bullied and crying on my fence. We're there to pick up litter. We're there when the school buses, trailers, trucks park anywhere. We've read Pembroke's 12-page letter to council dated the 21st of October, yet we've received no correspondence ourselves. The first time we heard about it since 2015 was on Saturday. To go to community consultation now will be premature, and we'll see residents asking council a myriad of questions which I'm not sure you'll be able to answer. In closing, Burnside Council, you know, it's led by a strong mayor, a committed elected member group and a highly competent CEO. Given the above, we ask that council defer a decision to go to community consultation at this time, not over the Christmas period when people are distracted and when more information can be provided. A hurried decision now will create issues for council and residents later. If we delay it, council, residents and Pembroke can work collectively together to address many of the issues that we've spoken about tonight. Thank you.
Right, do we have any? Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Peter. Would there be any benefit, in your opinion and residents' opinion, to have a representative or representatives on a working party to look at the overall master plan?
Yeah, absolutely. As Greg said, the master plan in your report, I know you may have seen an updated one, but that one's dated 2020. You know, has there been any updates? So, you know, the residents just want to be a part of the process because we live in the streets and we see the kids all day, every day, and some of those kids are our kids. So, you know, we're not opposed to it. We just want to be a part of it. And I just worry that if you go out to community consultation, as I said, it's all about how you ask the question and what you ask. And later on there could be some real surprises.
Councillor Jones.
Peter, thank you for coming. We've had arguments made in the past when we've discussed land sales in council that we should sell land in open space rich areas like Kensington Park and use the money to buy land in underprivileged areas like St George's, which has got no open space. What do you think about that argument?
Oh, look, that's a matter for council. I'm talking about Dunstan Avenue and Haslam Oval. Let's stay focused.
You were asking for that, Mr. Councillor Jones. Is there anyone else who wishes to ask Mr. Nicolaccio any questions? Otherwise, I will thank you very much for coming along, and we'll now move to our final presentation.
Thank you.
When you're ready, Mr.
Thank
Thompson.
you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. And thank you to those who have made deputations. We certainly don't have any intention of moving forward without appropriate consultation. But I do have a few words. My name is Luke Thompson. I'm the principal of Pembroke School. I have with me Mr. Peter Suljicic, who is the Building and Grounds Manager and is across the detail better than I in some of these areas. In October of 2020, Pembroke wrote to Council requesting Council commence a revocation process for the 5 small and irregularly shaped allotments as described within the submission. The submission also included an aspirational and preliminary site master plan supplied at Council's request. The master plan included potential elements to support the school's intent to provide improved sports facilities. The elements shown on the master plan would obviously be subject to applicable development approvals, of which Burnside Council is likely to be the assessing authority. It should not be forgotten that the submission includes the school assisting council to secure access to council infrastructure where this access currently does not exist. The school acquired the greater portion of Haslam Oval precinct in the early 1930s and commenced playing sport on the site soon after, and at once developed ovals and tennis courts. The school purchased the first house adjacent to the Oval on Dunstan Avenue in the early 1960s and has recently acquired the last privately owned allotment. The school has a long history on the Haslam Oval precinct. A document provided to Council in October of this year, compiled by ERPS, confirmed the entire site, including the council-owned allotments, are in the community facilities zone of the Planning and Design Code. Formerly, under the Burnside Development Plan, all land as nominated within the submission was in the community zone and the Community Policy Area 2, Pembroke School. This policy zoning was introduced in 2003. As a result, it has long been the case that the land has been zoned for school-related use. The current and proposed activities for the precinct are consistent with former and current zone policies. Pembroke values their existing landscape character and tree canopy, taking these factors into account when planning developments. An example of this was the Shipsters Road development in 2019, where the building was designed around 3 existing eucalypt trees. The school intends to maximise tree canopy across Haslam Oval precinct and seeks to provide a green corridor connection to Kensington Oval Reserve to the south of the site. The stand of red gums on the western side of Haslam Oval are integral to the character of the site, and these trees will be enhanced by additional plantings across the precinct. The expansion of playing fields is not to do with student growth. It is to attend to underdeveloped playing fields currently. We use sites across Adelaide and across other schools in order to accommodate the sports program we have. Playing fields will assist the stormwater infiltration and hence a reduction in reliance on the council's stormwater systems. Additional landscaping and grass playing fields will assist, we think, in mitigating urban heat to the open space and surrounding streets and dwellings. The submission provided by Pembroke School was to request the council commence a revocation process for the 5 parcels of land. This process commenced in 2015 and is now at a point where the school needs to work with the council on progress so that this process can provide suitable facilities for our school community. Mr. Suljicic and I would welcome any questions you may have regarding the school's request to commence the revocation process for the 5 parcels of land.
Councillor Davis.
What's the current, thanks for coming in. What's the current ability for the community to access the oval when not in use by Pembroke?
Well, there is no access.
Would you consider changing that?
If the council was prepared to buy private land to make access available to the public land.
We do have community access to the oval from Little Athletics organisation is there on a Sunday morning. We have our Pembroke Old Scholars as well, which is a part of the community as well. So there is some community access to the ovals at this stage.
Sorry, I thought you meant the parcels of land. No, I mean the whole site. Oh, sorry.
Like if residents want to walk there, could they?
Well, we do have members of the public walking there until the gates are closed to walk there. Yeah.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Luke, for coming along tonight. My concern, and thank you for the backgrounding that you reminded us of, my concern is with process and the representations that have been made to me. Firstly, all of the briefings we had as an elected body were in confidence until this paper was released, so we weren't able to discuss any of the proposals with the community. So they haven't found out or known anything till these papers were released on Friday or Thursday night. One of the concerns that they have said is, and you've talked about the planning process and all of that, there's no process for the community to be involved with either perhaps a forum or letterboxing or meetings on the oval, or so that residents who live around, as was articulated to us by the previous 2 speakers, can actually have input and provide. I mean, no one's opposed to all of this. No one, I'm not. I don't think anybody is opposed. But it's the process of how we go about achieving the very admirable aims. And I think the key to that is the community involvement. So can you elaborate, apart from before it gets to council? So can you elaborate on that?
So the school would obviously welcome input from community, but given what we're asking to do is commence the revocation process, councils obviously would be the body that would run that process.
Sorry, can I add? I'm asking about how Pembroke is interacting with its community that it is part of. It's surrounded by all of these residents.
What the delegation said, and those who have spoken tonight have said, is that they were aware of the master plan of 2014-15. We have not done any community consultation since then because we have not understood that that's a part of the process for revocation of the land. So, and we've been involved in building another site at Shipsters Road. If there is the need to involve community in an understanding the revocation of the land, that is absolutely fine. But we understood that that process did not require a consultation with us. So we apologise if that was wrong, but...
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Right, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you for coming in, and I guess my question kind of follows on from that, and just is to perhaps give you the opportunity to provide some clarification. I understand that it's a bit of a chicken and egg process, because you can't go out and consult the community on a master plan if you don't actually have that whole block of land to develop your master plan on, but then the community want to know what's going to be there. So I appreciate it's a bit cyclic in a sense. So I guess from the questions that we've heard from the community tonight, I was just keen to understand that if this process does proceed, obviously there's still a number of more steps to go, but what is Pembroke's process that they have in mind, that if they were lucky enough to be sold this land, the process that you would go through to consult the community and develop the master plan?
Well, we would have an extensive process, as we do for every building program at the school, and that would involve all the local residents. And the success of the process for the Ships's Road project was outstanding, and that was the feedback we received from all community members around that site. So we would continue with exactly the same process.
And that in fact actually involved not only Burnside Council, of course, one side of the road, but it also involved residents and the Council of Norwood Paynham St Peters, because they're on the other side of the road.
So we feel we have experience and are capable of and able to go through a significant community consultation process, and we fully intend to do that.
Thank you. Can I just follow on? And
Just make sure there's no one else who was in the queue. I didn't see anyone, so I will come back to you.
It was just, I guess, relating to that, for those of us who weren't involved in the Ships's Road I guess if you could just highlight in 30 seconds or less what the key steps that you went through with Ships's Road, so perhaps the community could understand that process you went through.
It had several elements to it. It had communication via writing to everybody. It had individual meetings with different residents. It had combined meetings with all residents associated. There was absolute transparency and clarity about what was going to occur and how, and genuine feedback and responses to that feedback, which included in a number of cases adjustments to the building and so on, particularly frosted windows and a few other things that we had not appreciated the impact that it would have necessarily on local residents. So it was an excellent process, and we actually hired an external consultant to run that for us as well, so that residents felt there was an independent voice.
This was for the sake of everyone's knowledge, this is the building that's on the corner, the very sort of triangular shaped building on the corner of Ships's Road. And of course, part of that connection was also the footbridge across the road. So that was part of that whole project that involved both councils. Right. If there are no other questions, then I will thank Mr. Thompson very much for his attendance tonight, and certainly lots of questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you,
So
councillors.
now we will move to the reports, and the first one is 11.1. Councillor Davey, you wish to withdraw it? Flemington Street, Councillor Lemon. New planning system review, Councillor Lemon. Community funding round 2. All right, no one has put their hand up, so is there anyone who wishes to move it? Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Seconded, Councillor Piggott. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Hire of open space and facilities policy. Councillor Davey, you wish to withdraw it? Finance end of month report. No one has raised their hand, so Councillor Piggott, you're moving. Seconded, Councillor Dawes. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Mayor's activity report. Councillor Henschke, you don't wish to withdraw it? Just move it? All right, seconded by Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Chief Executive's report. Moved, Councillor Henschke. No, you wish to withdraw it, Councillor Davey? Right, that's it for now. Councillor Davey, you withdrew Haslam Oval 11.1.
Thank you, Mayor.
Wait for a couple of minutes until 2 people leave the room. Yeah. No, you don't.
I have an
30 years
alternative
out-
motion that I've
20 years
sent
out of
through.
school. Doesn't matter.
Bronnie, do you have my alternative motion?
Just wanted to clarify something with councillor Henschke before you start. Okay.
Sure. I have an alternative motion that I sent through. So that is that Council 1 notes the progress with development of the Pembroke 2021 version of the Haslam Oval Master Plan. 2, defers consideration of the potential community land revocation process on the sites in question until Pembroke School has undertaken dialogue and engagement with the local residential and business community, particularly adjacent to Haslam Oval, in relation to the effects on parking, traffic, trees and the environment and noise spill in particular, and any other issues of concern relating to Haslam Oval development, and updates to the master plan and approach to council accordingly. And 3, receives a report addressing this community engagement along with Pembroke's proposals for revocation of the community land parcels to be brought back to council for consideration of the community engagement process by March 2022. We've heard tonight that there is new progress now with the development of the Haslam Oval Master Plan, and it's been largely brought forward by acquisition of property, significant property. But the master plan has been under development for many years, as we've heard. It stalled for a long time because they needed to acquire the extra land parcels on Dunstan Avenue, and that they're now at the stage where they want to acquire the community title portions and parcels on that oval, which is fine. The school needs to improve its facilities and, of course, wants to maximise its use of the site. However, as we've heard well tonight, the oval is surrounded on 3 sides by a very dense residential community who I understand have had, as we've heard, no dialogue with the school on their oval development for 6 years. They only became aware of this revised proposal 4 days ago and are surprised at the latest version and the speed of the proposal to undertake community consultation, which we've heard tonight. They are very keen to have input, structured input with the school to discuss the proposal and the implications, which are significant for that whole area. They've raised with concerns about the already significant traffic volumes in the streets around the oval, particularly for sports activities, and the issues of accessing their homes when cars are parked across driveways. There are many concerns about the environment and how the area will be presented, what access they'll have to it, how the trees will survive, what other landscaping there will be, and the use of the whole precinct. So the many impacts of the land sale are considerable, and I think, as was mentioned before by my colleague, there is a bit of a chicken before the egg situation here. I think the community are asking for input into the development of the master plan to a certain stage, and everyone knows that it can't be finalised until these parcels of land and the whole community revocation process is considered and discussed and consulted on. So it might mean that some parcels are available, other community land isn't. So they have asked that they have dialogue with the school, which I think is totally reasonable, before this process gets underway. There's also significant concern about the timing of the year and the fact that community consultation is proposed for before Christmas, which is totally unrealistic. So we don't yet have a concrete proposal. I ask for your support to defer consideration of the matter until we have the full facts presented to us in the new year. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? Right.
The CEO stated previously regarding community consultation. When exactly will community consultation take place?
Through Madam Mayor.
Hang on, we've got some microphones on. Can you turn yours off, please, Councillor Davey, because no one can hear at home.
Through Madam Mayor, just referring, it will commence in December 21 for a period of 21 days and allowing for school holidays that will conclude mid-February 21.
School holidays are about 6 weeks in the middle of all of that.
The period will actually, so the days that are going to be running that, so it's actually an extended consultation period.
Absolutely.
So it's actually running for almost 3 months as opposed to just 21 days.
Correct.
So it's okay, cool.
Councillor Hughes, you had a question?
I just had a question in regards to point 2. Can we actually direct the school to undertake an engagement, like just in terms of technicality, I guess?
Through Madam Mayor, I've just been turning my mind to the ability to enforce this one. We can ask the school to do whatever we wish. Whether the school accepts that's another matter.
Councillor Lemon, you had a question?
I do, thank you very much. Does the school have a legal obligation to consult with its neighbours, given that it's a private landowner? I understand that the school's a private landowner. Does it have a legal obligation to consult with its neighbours in terms of any future plans it might be making?
Just turning my mind to the legal side of that, I can't answer for when they lodge a development application, but my understanding is for what is before us this evening, there is no legal obligation to consult with the community, and as far as the community land revocation process is concerned, they have provided us with all the information that we need to commence that process.
Can I just remind people, when you are asking a question, could make sure you turn your microphone off when the answer is, because last time there were lots of complaints about people not being able to hear the answers to questions because there were 2 microphones on at once. So just a reminder to everyone, please. No, we have not yet. Councillor Henschke, you wish to ask a question? Or are you seconding? We haven't, I think we've given it long enough. Yes, I'm seeking a seconder. Councillor Jones, you're seconding? You wish to speak now?
I'd like to make a slight couple of word changes in number 2, please, if it's not material. That 2 reads, defers consideration of the potential community land revocation process on the sites in question to allow Pembroke School to have dialogue and engagement with local residents, etc. Because we have heard from Mr Thompson, the principal of Pembroke School, that it sounded like to me he was quite open to whatever process needed to happen.
Councillor Henschke, you need to seek approval of the mover and seconder to allow that change.
Yes, can I seek approval from the seconder? Yep. And the seconder? Yep, okay, thank you.
Apparently approval's been given. Need to get the wording correct now.
Until Pembroke has undertaken, no, it was, to allow Pembroke School instead of until. Yes, thank you. To allow Pembroke School to undertake dialogue and engagement, etc. Thank you.
Mover and seconder happy with that? as it reads now? Right, thank you. I seek speakers. Councillor Lemon.
I'll lead it off for the case against. I think this is a terrible motion. This is council telling a private landowner what to do. This has got nothing to do with the community land that is landlocked within this private land. It has nothing to do with that. What we've had tonight is a lot of. I do understand that people are nervous about what might be happening on this land, but in reality, whatever the master plan's going to be, that is what the master plan's going to be. This is private land, and the master plan will come to us in it as a council that will either approve or not approve it. To expect a private landowner to go and door knock the neighbours for a master plan is, I think, asking a lot. And I don't think council should be party to that. What are we going to have next? Are we going to have anybody that has a house demolished next door insisting that the council has the neighbours involved in the planning of whatever is going to be built next door? Because that essentially is what this is. What we're looking at here tonight, what's the original motion is whether we should go to community consultation in terms of some pipes and some landlocked tiny pieces of land that we've got in what is essentially somebody else's private land. And somebody did say tonight that these were mistakes that were made a long time ago, and good on council for actually fixing them now so that we don't have these historical issues of encumbrances and other fences changing. This is a good thing to do now. We're not making any decisions tonight. We're actually going out to community consultation. So all the people that actually live around the area all say, no, we want council to keep those pipes. We want that 2 square metres to be kept in community title. And we'll go, all right then, we will. Or they'll say, actually, why have we got these tiny little marks of 1 metre and by 5 metres sitting landlocked in the middle of somebody else's land? Yes, get rid of it. We're not trying to tell the school what to do. That's not our business. Neither is it the neighbour's business. These are private landowners. And whether we do this tonight or not does not stop Pembroke School from moving its oval to Beulah Road. They can still do that. They can do that. They can start the bulldozers next week if that's what they want to do. And this is fiddling around the edges and trying to be controlling, utterly controlling, for something over which we have no control. I will not support it.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm sorry, Councillor Lemon. I think the intention here is very clear. It's giving Pembroke School a choice, very clear choice. We're giving them a chance, a breath, a little few weeks, or as long as they want, allowing them to engage. And nothing like more we engage, the better we perform, is what I always say. And this community, we've heard tonight, we're there for the community, and the community have asked us to hold the horses, and I'll wait for the mayor. Oh, thank you, Mayor.
Now, Councillor Davis.
Can I ask?
The comments just made.
I'd like to ask a question, and then I'd like to speak, if I could. The question is, are there any significant trees on the parcels C, D and E? Or are there any trees at all on the parcels C, D and E?
Madam Mayor, just give me a couple of moments.
Just turn your mic off while you're
Thank you for your patience, Madam Mayor. I can confirm that the areas of land in C, D and E have no trees upon them. The trees are off to the side of the council-owned parcels of land.
Do you wish to speak now, or?
It's going to follow-up question.
Just make, oh yeah, that's allowed, so go ahead.
Apart from parcels A and B, is there anything stopping, because they've got trees on them, is there anything stopping Pembroke from continuing with the master plan, raising all the houses and essentially returning that to grassland at the moment?
Through Madam Mayor, can I just clarify the question? Are you asking, can Pembroke proceed without us dealing with the matter?
Well, can they demolish all the house? Could they put in a development application to demolish all the houses along Dunstan and continue, and then regrass C, D and E? Because they're currently behind fences, right? Is there anything stopping them from just continuing with it, save for parcels A and B?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll just get clarification, Mr. Can.
Pedantic on this, but I had complaints at the last council meeting that as soon as, when there were two mics on, people at home couldn't hear it all. I was to blame as well.
Through the Mayor, you're correct. There is nothing to stop the school from demolishing those existing houses, whether or not that community land is revoked or kept, subject to the appropriate approvals in place. However, the school has indicated previously that their preference is to sort this out before they commence any work in accordance with their master plan.
I think so. If I was Pembroke School, I wouldn't have done it in this way. And I think what this motion is doing is trying to save Pembroke School from itself, which I don't, as much as I want to be the hero and then force Pembroke School to go around to its residents and actually have a much better community consultation when it hits us, which would be the wise thing to do. My suggestion, but I don't think that's our job. I think that this will come back with a whole bunch of hostile residents. Pembroke haven't done the work, and I don't think that they understand the political machinations in terms of dealing with their residents. When this consultation goes out, our residents are going to say, you haven't engaged with us. They're probably going to get a sparse amount of information, and they're going to be, I think the community consultation that comes back will be highly negative. And we will listen to our community and probably knock back their request. And I mean, the principals of the school is listening to this debate now. I think that it would be a good idea for Pembroke to go and do that consultation exactly as Councillor Davies doing. But I won't support the motion because it's not our job to save Penfold from itself. Sorry, Pembroke from itself. If they don't have the political understanding about how to go and deal with their community and turn this consultation into a very positive one where they get an overwhelming support for it, I don't think it's our job to force them to do that. So, I mean, they're fully aware of what this council, I think, is saying. I don't think it's up to us to force them, and I think that we should put it to the community, and I'm quite certain that it will fail. That's how I feel it will go. But I think the request is, as a council, someone's put a request to us, right? They've said, can we do this? I think I'm very strongly indicating to them now that they should go and talk to their community and actually go and start this process immediately, because you want to be ahead of this issue, not behind it. And I think the idea that, it wasn't part of the process, well, it's not part of the process technically. And so I think we shouldn't turn our minds to that. I think that really is for Pembroke to position itself a bit more strategically and go and do that work. At the end of the day, I've got a request in front of me to revoke this land, and my view is not I'm not here to achieve a good outcome for Pembroke. I'm here to simply deal with their requests, which is a yes or a no. And so my view is I don't think I should be in a position to try and go and save them or give them any tips, although they've got a few in the last 3 minutes. So I'll be voting against this because I don't think it's my job to save Pembroke from itself. And I think we should go to community consultation and see what they think.
Councillor Hughes?
I just wanted to ask a question of the CEO. Can you just advise the Chamber what other questions and what information would be sent to the community as part of this process?
Through Madam Mayor, if can I refer that to Mr. Cant?
Through the Mayor, as part of the consultation package, all of the documents that are in front of the members at the moment will be made available through the website. There'll be a mail out to catchments surrounding the area, and ultimately a survey will be put together through Engage Burnside asking residents whether they support the proposal.
And can I just add to that, in the Engage Burnside generally goes beyond just the realm around the area too. So Engage Burnside is totally open to the whole community of Burnside. Just want to make sure that's
it's
clear, that everyone
engagement.
understands that. Okay. Right, Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. My question to the administration, if I can, is because I think we're getting a bit confused with the development and the master plan and the actual process of revocation, but this is a long process. Can someone step out how many points in the future this will come back to a governing body, or in how many points there is community consultation involved with this process? This is the first step in a very long process. Can someone just step that out so people at home can hear and people in this chamber can actually understand the length of this process?
Through Madam Mayor, if I can refer that to Mr. Cant.
Through your worship, this feels like deja vu. I believe I answered this at a previous council meeting. I think it's at least three occasions minimum. Following this consultation process, a report would be presented for council to make a decision on whether or not they wish to apply to the minister for revocation. At that point, if council endorsed to proceed, it would then apply to the minister to determine whether or not they would accept the revocation process. At that point, the minister will make the decision and bring it back to council, and council will then once again have the opportunity to decide whether it proceeds at that stage. And one more occasion after that, just because it's then been revocated, it doesn't mean that you have to then sell.
Yeah, so none of that actually involves the development and master plan components. What sort of, that's just the sale, so there's potentially 3-4 times it's coming back to this chamber just for this sale process alone, let alone the development and what will happen in the master plan and the consultation with that. Can you talk about that as well?
Through the worship, that is correct. Depending on, and we believe it would be considered by council and CAT, depending on the type of the development at the time. Obviously, the development process would have trigger its own consultation process at that stage. Maybe, depending on the level of development. And it would likely be considered by the council assessment panel, but that would need to be determined at the time. So yes, the master plan process itself would consider its own requirements with respect to community consultation.
Right, Councillor Jones.
Yeah,
As a seconder?
Can I ask a question, please? And I'll probably have a follow-up. Do we know who blocked off the access to Parcel E community land from Dunstan Avenue?
through, Madam Mayor, if I can refer that to Mr. Cant.
Through the Mayor, while the report talks about the history behind why some of these parcels of lands have emerged, we have no idea who actually blocked off the parcel of land, no.
So my follow-up question, if I may, is when are you going to go and remove the fence that's blocking off the access to the community land so that the community can enjoy the land?
I'll take that on notice, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Dawes.
Yeah, gee, I had an open mind tonight, and in listening in to everybody, I think I'm with Councillor Davis in the first bit, which is I wouldn't have done it this way, but I don't want hostile residents either. And I'm afraid if we do go to community consultation now, we're going to get a negative straight away. I don't know if that's going to serve its purpose. So I'm a little bit different from Councillor Davis. I think we do need to help if we can. Now, Councillor Davey, myself, the Mayor, I can't remember who it was, we did a tour of the area. And one of the questions I asked Pembroke was, what would it look like from Dunstan Avenue? And on pages 45 and 46, you have a description of the trees, probably not in year 1, it's probably about year 5. So it won't look too bad. But I had to ask Pembroke for that. So I'm hoping the principal can listen very carefully here. I think you did very well on the Shifters Road one, but I don't know if you're doing this one as well. And it's the fear of the unknown. And when you have the fear of the unknown, the residents start to worry. I asked 2 questions tonight about, whether you wanted resident representation on the working party, and they all said yes, that would be great. But we don't know the timeline for development. We don't know if there's going to be a huge gym in the corner or not, and how high is it going to be. Is it a 10-year project? All these sorts of things. There was a statement in there about the trees on the eastern side of Haslam Oval, which is on the Dunstan Avenue side. And on page 44 it says, those trees do not provide a dominant character. I have to disagree with that statement. Probably the only statement I would disagree. But I think we're halfway there. And I'd love to be fully there. And then I think the residents would support the community revocation or the land revocation. And we won't have to come back and forth. But at the moment, I'm in support of Councillor Davies' motion.
Councillor Lemon, I think you have a question. Okay, then it's back to Councillor Cornish. You haven't spoken, so...
No, I haven't spoken, and I do have another question. I do apologise. Does the administration know whether or not any community land was on the Shipsters Road development that the Pembroke School had to go through this process prior to actually going through the development consultation that they underwent?
Refer it to Mr. Cant.
Through the Mayor, that actually occurred in Norwood Council area, and we're not aware whether there was actually any community land. Apologies.
I don't have anyone else. Councillor Turnbull?
Thank you, Mayor. I will support this motion. It may not be a legal obligation for them to do it, but it's a goodwill gesture for the school to engage with the residents. Maybe they didn't realise the impact on the residents, given their due. Maybe they should just try to be a little bit more consultative. Residents are not anti-development. They made that very clear. They want to see it, but they just want to be part of the process. And this would be a good start to that, so I'll certainly support that motion.
Councillor Hughes?
Thank you. While I appreciate Councillor Davies' sentiment, and there have been a number of residents in the area that are concerned, similarly to what Councillor Davies says, in my mind, we've just been asked to start a process, and it's really on the school if they wish to engage with these people to help them make an informed decision. And I think from what I've heard from the CEO, given the time frame that this consultation potentially would occur over, that actually does give the school time to go out and do something if they wish. But I do think it's a bit of like, well, what do you consult on when you don't know whether you're going to have access to this full land anyway, and this is part of the first process. So I think, you know, really at the end of the day, what we're being asked to make a decision on today is actually to go out and engage with these residents and see what they think. And that's the process that we're being asked to make a decision on. So I appreciate the sentiment. I don't disagree that there's going to be a number of residents who are unhappy, but actually by starting this long process, it will actually give all of those residents an opportunity to see this information. So we'll be starting that process, and they might come back to council, they might go to Pembroke and ask a few more questions, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult. I think one of the things that we're all getting caught up on, I think similarly happened at the workshop, is the difference between the revocation of this community land and a development application. Because a lot of these issues that are in here and that have been spoken about tonight are actually issues that would have to be addressed as part of the development process. At the end of the day, all we've been asked to do is, would you be happy and would you engage with your community to see whether they would revoke that community land? So I think in terms of the criteria, I can't remember the numbers, my computer's restarted, but the long skinny section that runs down, you know, potentially there's limited value in that, but I think we'd spoken previously about the section near Beulah Road, you know, and perhaps I don't know whether there would be something in there around the option to, would you see A, B, and you know, would you support A, B, C, D, E, and break it down to that level. But I think you know, ultimately we can go out and ask the community, and I think the feedback that we've got is that people are nervous about the sale, but this is a chance to get their feedback early on in the process. So I will, you know, I appreciate where Councillor Davies is coming from, but I think we should go through the process. So I won't support this. I would support the officer's recommendation if this doesn't get up.
Councillor Jones.
I've got a question, if I may. My understanding is this consultation would go out to everyone in Burnside, so it would be open to the school to write to all their parents and old scholars and say, submit to the council, this is a U-Butte idea. Is that correct?
Through Madam Mayor, thank you for the leading question. Of course, the school would have that ability if they chose to do that.
Don't forget, of course, the school draws students from all over the state, so they would have to be Burnside residents in order to be noticed.
I understand that, Matt. So my follow-up question is, if we did that, would we put as a question, do you have a connection to Pembroke School? You know, alumnus, parent, attending teacher, none, type of thing. Would that be feasible?
We can't do that with any other form of consultation, so it would be totally inappropriate. Sorry, or a question, I believe, yes.
I think Councillor Jones raised a good question in that would it not equally be, if we let Pembroke School undertake this process, could they not just stack it out with their parents rather than us undertake it, in which case we could actually give locality data of where the person's living?
I'm not quite sure what you would mean by that, but I think the issue is any kind of consultation costs money, and at the moment it is our responsibility to do the consultation on the revocation of land. It's our responsibility to do that.
I suppose, to reframe it better, to what extent could we rely on a consultation conducted by a private landowner for making a decision here?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll refer back to a comment I made earlier in this debate, that we can ask the school to undertake consultation. We can't control the quality or the result or what comes back to us.
Councillor Cornish.
I'll enter the debate now, Your Worship. I won't be supporting this motion. I think it is, it's premature. We've been asked about the revocation of community land. The question is about community land and whether or not the whole of the city of Burnside values these 706 square metres of land as community and valuable to the community. Apart from the fact that we need an easement to actually manage the stormwater that runs underneath them, and a huge chunk that we currently don't have an easement from, but there's a question there in terms of one of the deputies and whether or not that is legal, that we do have an easement over. But I actually want to go out to the community consultation for the next 3 months and find out what the community actually has their thoughts on these 5 parcels of land for 706 square metres, and whether or not they're valuable for them to retain in the community title. I don't think anyone's actually used them in the community. They're landlocked. I don't know how someone can actually, probably, or apart from A and B, but they're still landlocked at the moment. So, I'll be interested to see what value the community places on these 5 blocks of land at the moment. And I want that feedback, which is what this community consultation would do. So I don't think, we should start the school in step 3 when we haven't even gone past step 1. So I won't be voting for this motion. I think we need to start at the start of this process, which is whether or not the community would be okay to sell these parcels of land, because if they're not, the school has to completely and utterly rethink their plans. It might be that the buildings go on Dunstan Avenue side. Golly knows what the process would be if we don't provide this. So, or the community doesn't. But, the school will have to work that out at a later stage. I won't support that for those reasons. So, but I will support the officer's recommendation.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Jones, you have oh no, you haven't spoken yet.
Look, I think this is a very sensible motion that Councillor Davies proposed, and it's because you can't consider whether you're going to sell some land unless you know what you're going to do with it. This is the whole point. This is what the residents want to know. If there was a benign use of this land, the residents probably say yes. If it was going to be something that was going to involve lots of trees getting cut down, they're going to say no. But to say that we can go out to consultation of whether we should sell this land without knowing what it's going to be used for is utterly ridiculous. I mean, what if the Adelaide Football Club came to us and said, Hazelwood Park, if we can have a training facility in Hazelwood Park, we'll build you a brand new swimming pool, indoor swimming pool. But first we need to revoke the community land status. And we say to the residents, oh, well, don't worry about the fact we're going to build a $60 million swimming pool on it. We're only asking you the question, do you want to sell the community land? It's utter nonsense. The school have said they really want to communicate with the community. We've had 6 years to do it. I don't see what the rush is that they can't spend a bit of time talking to the community saying, this is what we look to build on it. I mean, 6 years, they haven't given some thought to what they're going to do with this expanded oval. I mean, really, I'm struggling to believe that, to be honest. Tell the people what you're going to build, tell them what it's going to look like, then we can have sensible consultation with the locals about whether to sell the land. Because at the moment, we have the trump card. They can't do it unless we sell our land. Once we've sold our land, they can do whatever they like. Now, maybe it'll go to the CAP, maybe it'll go to the state government. If it goes to the state government, we've got Buckley's chance of influencing anything. Frankly, if it goes to the CAP, we've got no chance of influencing anything because Mike's only got 1 vote. So I think Councillor Davies put forward a good motion and I hope you support it.
Councillor Davis, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. If Pembroke released a master plan stating that they would keep all the trees on A and B, and then we went through this community land revocation process and eventually sold the land, is there any obligation on them to actually, is there any legal obligation on them to actually present that when they actually go to development approval?
Through Madam Mayor, I might just refer that to Mr. Can or Mr. Cooper.
Through the Mayor, if council sold the land with a condition attached to it that elements must be retained, such as trees, Magnus doesn't want me to use the word LMA, but I'll use it anyway, then that would be a condition that they would need to uphold.
But nothing else. They could completely rebuild, redesign, resubmit, just like the petrol station did 3 times. Correct, okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to enter the debate? I think there's only one left. No? Okay, so therefore we will go back to Councillor Davey to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the interesting contributions and very interesting debate. I think before we go out to consult with our whole community, we need to have good reason to sell this land, which belongs to the community. Of course, the school can do whatever they want with the site at the moment, but it's in the school's interest to undertake dialogue with the community that they are in, both close by and more widely. There's a whole range of ways they can do that. Just having a forum, having an open day at the Oval. There's just so many ways that they can be inclusive of their community, who surround them, support them in every way, as we've heard tonight, and want them to be able to make the best use of the site. But the bottom line is, which is why we as a council are considering this, is that they want to acquire community land to develop it further. And this isn't part of the planning process. This is way before the planning process. We're still in the phase of working under our responsibilities under the Local Government Act. And we have the following responsibilities under section 194 of the Local Government Act, which relates to revocation of community land. And it says at part 2, before a council revokes the classification of land as community land, A, the council must prepare and make publicly available a report on the proposal containing a summary of reasons for the proposal, a statement of any dedication, reservation or trust to which the land is subject, a statement of whether revocation of the classification is proposed with a view to sale or disposal of the land, and if so, details of any government assistance given to acquire the land, an assessment of, and how the council proposes to use the proceeds, an assessment of how implementation of the proposal would affect the area and the local community. I mean, that's pretty black and white. And if the council is not the owner of the land, there are other requirements. I'll leave that with you. We're still dealing with our responsibilities under the Local Government Act, managing dealing with a request to sell our community land. I think this is a good way to start the process off. The community haven't been involved. It's all been under the blanket and in confidence till now. And I think this is the process we should go down to start the process to support the school and the community. I hope you'll support it.
Right, I put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Looks like have the casting vote. And I believe exactly what Councillor Hughes and Councillor Cornish said. This is the first stage. This is not about what they decide to develop. And if, as a result of this, the community says no to us, we have been guided by the community. They will have equal opportunity as a school to... I have to give a reason first, Councillor Davey. You've had your plenty of say tonight. Please give me the opportunity. I need to justify. And my justification is, no matter what happens, the community will tell us what they want in relation to this very small piece of land. The school cannot make any plans for the redevelopment of that oval or that space unless they know they have the ability to purchase the land or not. Otherwise, they're wasting a huge amount of money in consultation, in planning, and all of these plans cost a huge amount of money before any decision can be made. So I understand that perspective, and that's why I will be giving the vote against the motion currently on the table. Division has been called. Those in favour, please stand. Councillor Henschke, Councillor Davey, Councillor Turnbull, Councillor Dawes and Councillor Jones. That's for the for. And those against, Councillor Cornish, Hughes, Davis, Lemon, Carbone and the Mayor. Thank you.
I was going to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. That would be a very good idea. I seek a seconder first. Well, hang on, we need a second. We need a motion has been already presented. I have a seconder first, and then if there's an amendment or an alternative, the alternative has to go through this process of winning or losing first, unless it's an amendment. Right, Councillor Hughes, you wish to second the motion? Thank you. Councillor Cornish, you don't wish to speak at this point? And Councillor Hughes, you wish to retain your opportunity? Right, now, Councillor Turnbull.
Could I please move an amendment to the officer's recommendation?
We'll hear what it is first.
Going back to that one, it's commenced a consultation process in line with sections 50 and 194 of the Local Government Act 1999 for the potential revocation of community land, classification of multiple sites neighbouring Haslam Oval, Kensington Park being the areas marked C, D and E in attachment F of the report. Be presented with a report following the results of the consultation to determine the next steps. In this one, I am leaving out A and B because I think that's a significant piece of land that could be useful for the community. So
It's not an amendment. No, it's a completely different motion. That's what I thought, but I needed to check on that. All right, so we now go to open discussion and debate on this matter. Oh, sorry, I hadn't looked.
She's sorting out.
Just previously sorting out the voting. Okay, from previous motion. All right, so. No. It's not an amendment. No, I consider and I've sought advice that it's not an amendment, it's an alternative motion. Hence, I'm ignoring it and we're going back to the motion that's on the table at the moment. And now it's the original motion, it's on your document. You've got the papers in front of you, Councillor Davey. Well, just be patient. Right, now does anyone wish to speak? Yes, of course you can, Councillor Tour.
So it's an alternative motion that I should have said. I'm speaking because I think that the officer's recommendation using multiple sites is not right. C, D and E are fine, little tiny parcels of land, really not useful to the residents. But A and B are, and so I'd like to leave them out. And the council keeps them. And there are, I had a count today, 8 trees, 2 at least significant, 6 are regulated on that little tiny piece of land. It would do with seating, it could be a community pocket park there. And what they haven't really mentioned much tonight is the fact that Haslam Oval will be fenced and gated and locked. See, the community will not be able to go in there. So they really do need a space, a little bit of community land of their own, where they can sit, rest their feet, rest the dog's feet, etc., on the way to and fro from, they'll have to go to Kensington Park Reserve to walk their animals and walk themselves. So I would like to have that little piece A and B out of the situation and just have in C, D and E. And really it doesn't make much difference to the configuration of what Pembroke want. because if you looked at page 35, you can see they haven't even used that little bit. They've gone around the road from Beulah Park. It's between the Beulah Park Road going around the corner, and I would like to see that kept as council land. So let's keep that portion for our residents. I hope you support that.
Well, no, hence you are not going to support this motion, I think is what
Well,
you're trying to say.
I'm just speaking to it, okay?
Yeah. Councillor Davis.
When it goes out to the community for consultation, will they be asked about each of the different sections, or will they be asked holistically?
Through Madam Mayor, the parcels will be identified and they'll be asked for their comments.
Okay.
So therefore they could individually identify ones they agree with or disagree with.
Okay. So they might really want D, for example.
Correct. They might choose a completely different option.
I mean, I'm voting
up
to
to
keep
them.
D. But, you know.
Councillor Davey.
I'd like to make an amendment. At 1, commence a consultation process. Because there's been so much confusion about when this is actually going to be, could you, through the CEO, through you, actually tell me which timeline is proposed for this consultation process?
I think this has been said 3 times tonight. It begins on the 21st of December.
I'm telling you I'm confused, so I'd like it in the motion.
If the CEO is okay with it, I'm happy to put the timeline that the consultation ends in February or whatever the date was, if that provides clarity to the chamber and the community.
So, and therefore, through Madam Mayor, Mr. Can, if we can just clarify a date. Through Madam Mayor, I'm just going to go back to the wording in the report. Consultation. I'd be comfortable including the wording to commence in December 2021 for a minimum period of 21 days, excluding school holidays, to be concluded mid-February 2022. And the only reason I'm shying away from giving specific dates on the run here tonight is if I make it 1 day or 2 days too short, I can set the council up to not comply with its 21-day requirements. So I just request a little bit of flexibility, but I'm happy to commit to that broader wording.
It's not including the school holidays.
If I can.
Give us the dates, because December the 21st is the school holidays.
So, if I can clarify.
Sorry, I don't understand.
So, if I can clarify for the benefit of the chamber, we're saying that we will commence on a day in December. I can't give you the day because I don't know exactly what it is at this point in time. All the school holidays will be excluded from the time period. Then we'll have 21 days which are not school holidays or holidays, which will be classed as consultation days. That will take us to mid-February.
I do have a question. I have a question of administration. Given that there is so much confusion about the dates for community consultation, and given that partly that is because the community consultation spans a rather long time so that it can actually pick up, it's not school holidays, why don't we start the community consultation? Is there a reason for us not to start it at the beginning of the school term in 2022 and finishing it 21 days later? And so you've got a continuous stream of consultation as opposed to over a long period of time, which is granted a bit odd for some people.
Through Madam Mayor, I think that's a very good suggestion by Councillor Lemon. More than happy to accommodate that.
So say from the 1st of February? No, that's school holidays.
Excuse me, let's move and second.
I was moving an amendment.
An amendment. It was an. CEO has some dates.
All right, Madam Mayor, if we take it that school holidays end at the end of January, I'm happy to say that we'll commence the consultation on the Wednesday, the 1st of February, and it will run for 21 days, minimum.
I already asked that. Right, so days in line with sections. Mover and seconder.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak, but I did just want to address what Councillor Turnbull says, because I appreciate the point that she's raising about parcels A and B. But ultimately, I think it's worth us all understanding that we can go out and consult. Everyone will have the opportunity to say what they think about A to E. But at the end of the day, we have the decision whether we sell that or not as a council. So those results can come back and people can say, yep, we want to sell all the land. And as an elected body, we can say, well, we did the consultation, but it doesn't matter what they say, we're going to keep A and B. And that is 100% up to us as an elected body. But I think we should go out and consult on the whole area, because I think it's important for people to understand that all of those pieces of land are community land. And then as a group, once all that information comes back, we can agree, disagree, but we ultimately get to make decisions. So by not including that doesn't mean necessarily that I would support the sale of A and B, but I support going out and asking the community about all of those parcels. And I think we just need to keep that in mind.
Right, Councillor Davey was next. Then Councillor Carbone. Sorry. I just got a bit confused over here.
I think this is a pretty good. I think starting in February the 1st is actually a really good idea, and I think that it particularly picks up what Councillor Dawes is saying, and I hope that Pembroke School are wise enough to go and consult with their community over the next 2 months to avoid a whole bunch of community outrage, which is potentially heading their way and our way. And I think that this kind of straddles both lines, in that we don't need to help them, but rather it gives them an opportunity of 2 months to do that work over the school holiday period, in which case they can actually go and have those forums and go and have that consultation, and that will put them in the best place, I think, to get this over the line. And then I think from February, well, then it's on. I don't think we should be compelling private owners to do one thing or another. I think they should rise and fall by their own sword and by their own merit. Yeah, and if I think that if they're wise enough to do that community consultation, then they now have an opportunity of 2 months to go and do exactly that, which I think would massively benefit themselves. So in respect of the actual act, I feel comfortable that we can provide our community with more than enough information. And in respect of Councillor Turnbull's motion or question, the fact that residents can individually vote on each parcel, I think, addresses that. So I think in the end of it, setting the time frame in this way gives everybody the best ability to run a proper process, and at the end of the day, it's up to us. So if Councillor Jones wants to declare that that walkway on attachment E should be fenced off and have a road to nowhere, we could eventually do that in the end. But I think we'll be then, because that's probably what I'm guessing Councillor Jones would love to see, is a roadway to nowhere. And if that's what the community come back and tell us we would like more pathways going nowhere, then we can obviously go and do that. So this is what I think is a good thing, and we can actually go and ask our community responsibly for their opinion. So I think this strikes a good balance, and I hope the rest of the council will support it.
Right, Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Oh, geez. I would hate to think what is going through the mind of the headmaster of our largest school in Burnside right now. Pembroke is one of the most respected schools in the state. It is one of the oldest schools in the state. It is our largest employer. It has been around since 1915. People move to this area to go to Pembroke, and they have growing enrolments, and their academic performance is outstanding. Who are we to lecture them on public relations? Who are we to lecture them on how they should engage their residents? They have been sitting out in the corridor for the last 2 hours listening to us tell them what to do. It should be the other way around. All we are asked to do is to consult the community on random, useless bits of land that I doubt anyone knows we own it, and I doubt anyone will miss it. We are going to put the funds towards something useful, and we've been down this road many, many times before.
Councillor Jones, please refrain from using such language and interrupting non-member speaking.
Councillor Jones should apologise. I apologise.
No, I enjoyed it. So no need. So let's just take a chill pill. Let's just keep it real around here. We are talking about selling some useless bits of land. There's been too much hot air in the last couple of hours about giving them lectures. I think we should stick to what we know and let them worry about community engagement and looking after their public relations. So let's give the community a say. They will have their say, and then we can all get on with our lives.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Random, useless trees. We want to actually chop more trees down. We don't value the trees, even though people can't walk on the ground underneath these trees. These are trees that exist, and who uses the trees? The birds, don't they? They fly from one canopy to another. We are here because we're elected members of residents, and the residents have told us very clearly tonight, and an expert planner has told us, and I'm not a planning expert, but I'm listening to an expert planner, and he said tonight it's premature. There is insufficient information. Okay, we'll go forward perhaps with this motion. I won't be voting for it, but we'll end up with some information, certainly from the community. We'll end up with statistics, but it would be much higher quality if they had more information, as the expert planner, one of our residents, said to us tonight. It was almost 2 hours ago. Clearly there's something wrong. That's why we're still here for 2 hours. We can't make a decision easily. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Jones. Without the bad language.
No. Apologies for the bad language. I would just like to say, au contraire, Councillor Carbone. It's clear to me that parcels A and B are not useless. That is 300 odd square metres of land. That is a good sized piece of land. Sorry? 238. That is a good sized land for a little pocket park. I had the great privilege to attend the soft opening of our new Laurel Avenue Community Garden. Absolutely magnificent. It would have had 10 boxes on it, and now it's a brilliant space for the community. This would be a nice little space for a community garden. We know that the East Residents Association, who think that the East stops at Track Gardens, want a community garden in their little patch. I'm sure the people in Kensington Park would love a community garden on this little patch of land. Now, Councillor Davis thinks I want a walkway to nowhere. Well, the fact is, here's my suggestion for what we could do with the land. We could follow our watercourse policy, 7.1.3, and restore Stonyfell Creek to be an open watercourse. The environmental report we had last fortnight, said what great value you get from riparian areas. That's what we could do. That's what we could do with the other bit of drainage reserve we've got in Kensington Park. So it's not useless at all. It actually has potentially enormous environmental value. So I'm going to vote against this motion. At a push, I'd vote for Councillor Turnbull's alternative, because I really do think A and B have very easily realised potential for the community. Possibly we're not going to, this motion will get through. I think it's a terrible idea, and I hope the community come out in spades to say what a dreadful idea it is.
Right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Right, then I will go back to Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. What I'll say is please support this motion. Do not fear the community. It's democracy. They should have their say. They legally should have their say. It's actually in the Local Government Act. Please don't fear them. Vote for this. Let's find out what they actually say about this, and then that can come back to the chamber. So I trust our community in consultation, so please support them and let them be consulted.
Those in favour? Those against? The motion is 1. Division has been called, so those who supported the motion, please stand. Councillor Cornish, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Davis, Lemon, Carbone. Those against, Councillors Henschke, Turnbull, Dawes and Jones. Now, I know that's the case, but we also have the Flemington Road gentleman who has waited all of this time. The question is, should we, and I'm going to put this to the group, do you wish to do that one first before we have a break, or do we need to have a break now? And apologies to Mr. Mariano for the delay in this. I think we all do need a little 10-minute break, and then we will recommence at whatever the time is. 9:23. Please be back on time. we'll start. Thank you. Right, Flemington Street was Councillor Lemon. Please, by all means, start. We have seven.
I move the motion as the officer's recommendation. This is a planning and development code amendment. This has nothing to do with any planning. There are no plans to look at. This has nothing to do with the neighbours. The reason that this is before us tonight, because this is going to go to the minister from the people that own the land anyhow, and the only reason it is before us tonight is, in doing so, I take you to page 179 of this particular report, and that is Council's submission. So it is before us tonight, because this will be going to the minister as a code amendment anyhow, so that Council's submission can go with it as a package. Now, there's a fair bit of history with this. This is a site that was a primary school for Masada College. It hasn't been a primary school for 10 years. It's been left empty. And this code amendment is the first that Burnside will actually, the first for Burnside in that sense. It's actually been conducted and paid for by the owners of the land. So all we've got in this is our comments on the amendment and what would make it better and whether we support it from page 179 onwards. What is going to take place on that land we don't yet know, although we have been led to believe by the people that own the land that it will not be dissimilar to Amber Woods, which is actually adjacent to that. So the zoning that they're requesting is very similar to the zoning entirely around it. Everything they're requesting is above board, and it is highly likely that this will go ahead and the minister will accept that. It's very exciting in a lot of ways because this is the first code amendment that we've had anything to do with, and it's very straightforward, so I hope you support it as is.
And Councillor Dawes, you indicated you wish to second it, I assume? Do you wish to speak now?
Yes, I'll speak now because I can imagine we've got a tight agenda. I support everything that Councillor Lemon just said. There was one thing in particular that I wanted to highlight here, and that is the minimum site size. Now, Mr. Mariani, I'm not too sure if I said that right, talked about 160 as the minimum site size. We have said in this letter, with the topic number 5 on page 180, that we are recommending at least 200 to 250. Now, the only thing I'd like, I just thought that the accompanying letter on page 178 could just highlight that from the CEO, because what that minimum site size does for us, it helps out on the parking issue, on the number of trees, etc., etc., etc. So it's a great influencer of the development on that land. So that's the only thing I would like to add to that letter, is to ensure that the Minister doesn't forget that in topic number 5, our recommendation is 200 to 250. Thank you.
Right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? No? Then I will let you sum up.
Thank you. In terms of the minimum site size, this is what's on that is what you generally have in a neighbourhood zone such as this. So I would imagine that the minimum site size will sort itself out in terms of resale value for any development that takes place on that, because the people that are buying that will want what is commensurate with the area that they're buying in. So whilst I agree, I hope that the Minister will take notice of what we say, and it's highly likely that any future development will actually not be cheek by jowl. I suspect this will be a very tidy little development when it finally gets done. So I hope you support it.
Right, those in favour? Those against? Carried.
Thank you. I pulled this mainly because I wanted to say that the preamble to the attachments was absolutely, you know, kudos to whoever wrote this. This is really fantastic. This gives us in a few pages a snapshot of how the new Planning and Development Act is different from what we've had before, and how it's actually affecting us, and how it may affect us. It actually says that we don't know completely how it's going to affect us, but it may affect us. One of the things that I took a number of things out of it. One is that current state average for deemed to satisfy development is 15%. Burnside is 9%, so I don't know whether that's going to be good or bad in the long term. Paragraph number 28. In 7 months of operation of the Act, there's been 30 public notifications. With the previous Act, which was our Development Act, in the same time, there was 140. Paragraph 82, in current terms, public notification is carried out at about 21.5% of the rate of the previous system, which means that now we're doing public notifications less than a quarter of what we did in the past. So the debate we just had for 2 hours prior to reconvening, we need to be mindful of the fact that the new Act for development actually doesn't give us the same sort of community consultation that we previously did. And finally, and that is on paragraph 82, if anyone wants to have a look at it. And finally, paragraph 88, and I'll just give you my view on this. The last Act that we had was developed in 1982. Prior to that, we had an Act that was 1970s. That is in a lot of ways why we're having a lot of the problems that we're having now, with bits of land that are landlocked, with encroachments, with encumbrances that we've only just discovered. Because in the 1970s, as those of us that were around in those days remember, we did things very differently then. We do things a lot better now, or we did in 1982. And we're still now suffering in a lot of ways for what we did in the 1970s, and that means that we have sort of bits and bobs around the place that we are trying to deal with at this stage. So excellent piece of work. Thank you so much for giving that to us. I'm going to keep this aside, and I'd really love to see something like this annually, quite frankly.
Councillor Dawes, you indicated you wanted to second, I believe?
Yes, I think Councillor Lemon covered most things. Only thing I'd like to add is that with the City Master Plan development, which goes into next year, there are still a number of zones which are general neighbourhood zones with less protection, and the requirement to change those to established neighbourhood zones will be part of that master plan coming forward to you. So, but I do again recommend this to you. Please take Councillor Lemon's idea, copy that from your papers, put it in a hard copy, because it's a very useful reference guide. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
In relation to, and I've seen the Commissioner's response, but a lot of their responses don't, I'm talking about paragraph 46 on page 189, in terms of our recommendations. Sometimes the Commissioner has responded, but other times they just haven't. I mean, what ability do we have to press those issues and seek their implementation? Do we have levers in the LGA that we could actually push for those amendments to occur, or could we get a petition of all councils or something? Is there a better way that we can push for this more broadly?
Through you, Madam Mayor, one of the things we are doing is, as part of the ERA group of councils, as part of our submission to the state election process, we are pushing for the planning reforms that we felt we didn't get as part of that process. I think that's quite a strong way for us to advocate.
Just to carry on from that, we've already met with Vicky Chapman and we're meeting on the first week of December with Emily Burke, so we're covering both sides. Councillor Pickett. Oh, sorry, hang on. No, there's two ahead of you. Councillor Davey, then Councillor Henschke and then Councillor Pickett.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate Martin Cooper and his team on a fantastic report. I endorse everything that Councillor Lemon said. This has really helped me understand a lot of the concerns I had, and a lot of the confusion and ambiguity about the new planning system. So it was all that not totally all, but it has really helped crystallise and clarify a whole lot of the issues associated with this and how much work and responsibility it is for the council. I've just got a couple of questions. One of them relates to compliance, which is paragraph 47 to 49 on page 189, or paragraphs 47 to 52. Are we budgeting or improving our budget lines and resourcing in the next budget to allow us to have a robust compliance forum and approach? And I've got another couple of questions.
Through Madam Mayor, at this point in time I haven't formulated an exact approach to the budget, but I think it's fair to say there's probably a number of areas across council that I am resource constrained, and this possibly is one area that I may look to ask council for some increased funds, but ultimately it comes down to council's appetite and how much compliance I wish to undertake. But I'm happy to have the conversation at budget time.
Do you have a subsequent question relates to that? Otherwise I need to come back to you for further questions, all right? Because I've got two more people still to speak. That's Councillor Henschke now.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Item on page 187, you'll read paragraph 32 refers to guidelines. It says the code provisions are taken as guidelines. Now, guidelines we have to ensure are followed and we don't go outside the guidelines. There has to be an overwhelming case to do that. What's the overwhelming case, we have to ask ourselves? A guideline, say, for 3 stories in a certain zone, we have many zones like that, could have a case for more than 3 stories. But it has to be an overwhelming case, and that has to be for the community. I do hope our administration are resourced to do that, and I'm sure they are, as they've shown by this report. It is going to be tough because what we've read in our report are pages and pages of asks that the council administration have asked of the State Planning Commission through the first draft code. The facts are 70 asks. We asked 70 for 70, we had 70 requests. 40 were denied. 4 out of 10 we got over the line. Our success rate is pretty low and it's tough. And many other councils have gone through the same thing, and so have the community. So I do hope, and I'm sure we're going to, as a council, have policies in place where we will follow the guidelines. Thank you.
Councillor Pickett.
It's a follow-up question perhaps to Councillor Davis earlier that you answered around talking to the Planning Minister. Get a sneaky quick one in, are we talking to the new Planning Minister now? No, it's a serious question. We do have a new one, don't we?
It's not active.
It's good to get in on the ground floor. My question really, my question actually was around what came through. It is an excellent report, well written. The question is what happens next, I feel. And I guess the one that really jumps off the page to me, and perhaps I'm speaking to it
But my question is, when we're talking to the LGA or talking to the Planning Minister, how high up the list of issues is the fact that notification has gone backwards and my ability to do anything about it in terms of appeal rights, even if I am notified, has gone backwards further under the new system? Is that a key plank of when you're talking to LGA and planning ministers?
Through Madam Mayor, I think it's fair to say that's right near the top. One of the key conversations with Vicky Chapman the other evening was the fact that councils effectively being dealt out of planning decision-making processes, and that consumed 3/4 of the debate.
Yeah.
So no, I'd say it's one of the key issues we are talking about. Yep, no question.
Is there anything more that we should be doing perhaps now, pre-election, to raise that to the... Because it's something that has particular resonance, I suspect, with the residents.
My answer to that would be encouraging whoever the residents are to write to both politicians and state their points of view and their concerns, because these issues are not going to go away, irrespective of who gets in power in the next election. Vicky has been a very good listener in terms of taking on board some of our issues and about being willing to listen to the communities and wanting to make changes, but you know, everybody is hamstrung to a certain extent, and it takes time to get changes. But these kinds of deputations or these kinds of requests, I know, you know, Councillor Henschke said we only got 4 out of 10, but that's a big move to even get those. Based on the first review of the planning code as it's actually enacting at the moment. So I think it's all future opportunities, and you know, get people to write to their local members and with what they want. And heritage is another issue that, of course, has been very prominent with us as well.
If I may, Madam Mayor, I think one of the positives for me is Vicky's commitment that they're making changes as they implement and develop this thing. So there's certainly, they seem amenable to change if they're happy with it.
Yeah.
It's a caveat. I think it's just a continual pressure. I think certainly I'm probably going to make some representations on behalf of the City of Burnside directly, but we'll also continue with the ERA approach and double down with the LGA. I think it's fair to say the LGA obviously they've got a kind of a hotline straight into government, and I know they're taking up this issue. But I think it's just
and Garrock, through the LGA, has really taken a strong line on this, and David O'Loughlin's always preaching to us about the achievements and the limitations of achieving issues. But certainly it's right up there on the list. I don't have any other names. Councillor Cornish and then Councillor Davis then.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I'll enter the debate and say support all the comments that have been made so far. And in fact, I think I actually highlighted with the expert panel back in the day that community consultation will be their biggest falling down with this process. And strangely enough, I was talked to by, I think it was Brian Haynes, QC, who was at that workshop at the City of Campbelltown that we all went to at the time, and was also talked back down to from our head of Garrock, who was putting me in my place that I was being a little melodramatic, that the community was certainly going to be included, but quite clearly from the figures that we've had, it is a huge reduction in community consultation in the process. So I certainly, I do remember that quite a lot, and it's interesting to see that it's actually come out that way. So I do support the work you guys have done is just amazing. Being on top of this is just incredible. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. And in terms of timeframes, I mean, have we seen that come down I mean, what was it previously and what is it now in terms of the timeframes for development applications to go through? I note in the end of the report, in paragraphs 92 forward, that you're saying it's too soon to tell in terms of the outcomes of it, but in terms of timeframes, has it been successful in achieving that result?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in terms of achieving what result?
Well, it was the state government's objective to reduce the amount of time that a development application would take to be processed.
Oh, certainly. Through Madam Mayor, I'm sure Mr. Heinrich would love to share the details of that with us.
Through the apologies, through the Mayor, we are largely meeting those timeframes, which is important because the timeframes now come with effectively a guillotine at the end, a deemed consent ability, which isn't necessarily the end of the world, but it's something that we really want to try and avoid.
If I may, Madam Mayor, can you just provide commentary? Are the timeframes shorter under the new scheme than the old scheme?
Through the Mayor, they vary, but generally, overall, shorter.
Which was one of the objectives. All right, Councillor Henschke.
It's a question for the administration, please, through the Mayor. We have our planning officers have delegated authority to decide whether to consult if there's a change in land use, and if it's deemed to be minor, then they don't, at present, they don't have to notify any neighbours. We've had a recent example of that. My question is, can we as council have a policy to always notify for change of land use, or will you be taking that to state government?
Through Madam Mayor, my current stance on this is that I'm happy to keep lobbying state government, but I don't think it's prudent for us to try and have a council policy that seeks to contradict state planning policy. We need the state plan. We need the state to lead that change.
Follow-up question, please, very briefly. A criteria for minor impact on residents. Can we as a council elected body have that criteria?
Through Madam Mayor, it's not relevant to the report. It's a very specific plan matter, and I'm happy to take it offline for further conversation.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of points that I want to make. One is that the notifications have gone backwards, and a couple of people have talked about that. One of the things that I do when any of my residents get in touch with me, I don't encourage them to write to the minister. I encourage them to actually make an appointment to speak to their local member. And I strongly urge them to do that. So every Friday, our local member has appointments with her constituents, and I'm just hoping that most of them are actually people that are disgruntled with what's happening in their neighbourhoods. In any case, I would urge you all to encourage people you can't help them because we're hamstrung. There's nothing council can do because the assessment panel is actually delegated to make decisions on our behalf, but we can actually support our residents in speaking with their local member. The other point that I'd like to make is the 40 of our things were denied. Yes, they were. One of the things that was denied was on page 189, 46.6, and I just want to make this point, tree canopy and climate resilience, where we actually had concerns about being able to pay into an offset account when you knock down trees. On page 191, you've got paragraph 67, which states quite nicely, the planning system has never been tremendous at delivering significant positive environmental outcomes, and this is no different in relation to the Planning and Design Code. So, in actual fact, there's always been a tension between environmental issues and development. But one of the things that I think ERA can be taking to the state government when it's talking to the state government is this. The Minister for Environment has got a Greening Adelaide plan that is hot on preserving canopy and really hot on increasing canopy in metropolitan Adelaide. So I see his plan as here, and I see the design code as here, and they're not actually meeting up. And I think one of the things we should be encouraging government to do is coordinating and dovetailing their plans so that they work well with each other. And I think that's one of the things the era could be saying. Why is it that this sits out here by itself like a lump on a log when every planning decision can in fact cut down the canopy? So I'd be encouraging them to look at that and make some explanations to the people of South Australia before March next year.
Can I just say that that was one of the other major factors that we discussed with the Planning Minister at our meeting, and we will take it up with the opposition as well. It's one of our 4 or 5, and I think Mr. Cowley put it in a recent TGIF about 2 weeks ago about the topics that we discussed with the Planning Minister.
And I would actually say, let's not forget that this new planning system came to us from the previous government and was pushed through like a steamroller from the previous government. And Burnside never got a look in anywhere because the previous government didn't care.
Okay, those in favour? Those against? Carried. The next one is Councillor Davey, Hire of Open Space and Facilities Policy.
Thank you. I'm happy to move in accordance with the recommendation, and I just had a couple of comments. One is that it's very pleasing to see where we've included more environmental requirements in the policy, and especially at 12.2.2 on page 293, where we've included that demonstrate that the event will have a minimal impact on the natural environment by embracing environmental sustainability principles and appropriate waste minimisation practices such as using recyclable products. When are we going to be able to ask people to take home their rubbish when they use public facilities? Is there any sort of precedent for that, especially in big parks and things like that?
I have a concern when the state government removes rubbish bins from Waterfall Gully, for example, from that reserve, then because not all people will be really good in terms of taking their rubbish home with them, as we sometimes have issues in different parks within Burnside and up on Mount Osmond Reserve, which is state government, but we get to clean it up.
Through Madam Mayor, my comment in response to that is I think it's an education exercise. I think we've got to be careful. If we remove bins, we'll end up with rubbish that we have to expend funds picking up. But I think there's nothing wrong with us continuing an education message with the community.
I'll just briefly sum up, yes. In actual fact, on this, there is a bunch of residents who take this very seriously, and there's just a petition that's come in from the dog walkers of Kensington Oval Reserve who have requested taken up a significant petition requesting a dedicated doggy poo bag bin for easily accessible in the park, because as well as looking after that, they also pick up huge volumes of rubbish that are left by visitors to the park. So there are some challenges around the place as well.
Right, to put it to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Sorry, the last one is also Councillor Davey. 11.8.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to move in accordance with the recommendation, and it's good to see all the community usage of the Kensington Community Leisure Centre and the detail associated with that. I just have while I'm moving the motion, I just have a query about, in the reports requested by resolution, on page 333, about progress with the Thornbury Street Beulah Park road closure. The residents are a little bit concerned in that they haven't been they're having a great deal of difficulty working with DIT, and they're not getting any feedback or being able to make contact and have meaningful feedback from DIT. They're having incredible amounts of exposure to the noise, especially the night noise and the fumes and dust from the McGill Road intersection upgrade. And I just wondered, is there a dedicated contact in DIT that we could build up so that the residents, especially over the holiday period, have someone they can contact when they've got a problem?
Through Madam Mayor, I'm happy for us to try and source a direct contact and let the residents know. Yep, maybe to make that undertaking.
Thanks. Can you CC me into the, and Councillor Hughes? Thank you.
Right. Councillor Davey, do you wish to speak?
I have another couple of queries.
Oh, okay.
The motion actually requested we implement a temporary 40k per hour speed limit for those small streets, and I wondered what progress we're making with that, and when the actual road closure will take place. I understand it's in coming weeks, but I'm not sure that we're clear about that. If that could be clarified, please.
Certainly, through Madam Mayor, and I'll thank Councillor Davey for some questions she sent in earlier. So in response to the 40 km/h component, we have written to DIT and as yet have no response in return. So we're waiting for their response. Now, just with regards to when the actual works are going to be undertaken, sorry, Mr. Can, I just can't see when we said the works are going to be undertaken.
Through the Mayor, we believe it will be delivered in early December.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Yep, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you able to email us when that's progressed and developed? Thank you. Please. Are DIT keeping you involved in the loop?
Mr. King?
We often request additional information quicker than it's coming towards us, but that's no different to most of those departments. But we have a reasonably good working relationship with them.
Yep, certainly. So the responses that you should have in your email now, and I've just provided, have been confirmed by DIT.
Right. Is there anything else? Otherwise, I'd like to put the motion, Councillor Davey. Right. Yeah, you already did. Seconded it. I thought you did. Is that correct? Yes. Right. Councillor Pickett. I'm voting. Good. Those of you in favour, please raise your hands. Those against? Carried. We move on to questions on notice. You have received the answers to those. Motion on notice, the first one is 13.1, and that is Councillor Carbone. Page 343.
Thank you, Worship. This rescission motion is off the back of a motion that was passed by this chamber 2 weeks ago, which enabled administration to provide a bit of a reminder as to the journey we've had so far and the possible locations, all the possible locations that have ever been discussed, shortlisted, mentioned and thought about in the last 3 years. But of course we did have one motion that was passed previously which made it a little bit messy, that process, and that was regarding Kensington Gardens Reserve. So if we're going to be legitimate about the motion that was passed 2 weeks ago, then we need to rescind this previous motion, which puts everything back on the table, and we can have a bit of a bit of a rethink, if you will, about all possible locations, including, of course, Kensington Gardens Reserve. I don't think I'll say any more. That's all I had. I mean, I do have my belief that this always was a very good location, but we are going to be keep an open mind and go into that workshop on the 7th of December with, I think a fresh perspective, because we've all learnt a lot over the last 3 years, and with the benefit of hindsight, we can go back with a fresh perspective and fresh eyes, and perhaps a little wiser, that we can review all the possible locations. So I ask that you support this motion. It's not necessarily guaranteeing Kensington Gardens Reserve, but it does enable the staff to provide a fresh approach to all the locations that we've always talked about over the last 3 years. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Hughes, you had your hand up earlier and then I've got you. No, she put it up a long time ago. So seconded by Councillor Hughes, holding off to speak, but Councillor Davis can speak.
Yeah, I was hoping to second the motion as well. I think that's right. I think that we need to look holistically at the City of Burnside's resources. This is the only one that wasn't on that list, and I think from the debate that we had last week, it would be prudent to go and reconsider all reserves and all parks in an equal and measured manner. And so I do think it's appropriate that we rescind this at this time. At the time, we had an extensive debate on it. I still hold my views in relation to this reserve, but I think it would be unfair for us not to look at, when we're basically going back to that 2019 report, I think it better if we take that step backwards and then try and start again from an even playing field. So that's why I support the rescission of this particular motion.
Is anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Hughes, off you go.
Doesn't seem like there's much of a crowd, so I'll jump in. Oh, you were going to go, were you? No, I'll jump in quickly. Look, if this doesn't get up, we've always got a second crack with 13.2. No. So I'm staring. Look, as Councillor Carbone has said it very well, this isn't a motion about putting a wheel park in Kensington Gardens. This is about actually taking a step back in time to 2019 and actually cleaning the slate and starting afresh. So I hope that you support this motion just to give us the opportunity to go back and revisit this. I think it's a process that we've all learned a lot over the last 2 years. So I just hope that we can start the process with a fresh set of eyes, perhaps a little bit more knowledge than we all had in 2019, so that we can then get the most out of the workshop on the 7th of December.
Councillor Piggott.
Hi, Rochelle. The reason this council took Kensington Gardens Reserve off the list were valid then, and they're probably even more valid now. They were valid for the reason of the fact that Kensington Gardens Reserve already does a lot. Henry and I in our inbox tonight, actually, or this week, have received a complaint in regard to the putting in the bridge over the creek. The fact that it is actually getting away from the natural part of the park. A park that is actually already, heavily used in, a lot of non-natural things, I guess. We've obviously got tennis courts, rugby fields, kindergartens. How could I forget the cricket? How could I forget the cricket? That's very true. So the reason it was taken off at that stage was all those things. In fact, we have made it worse. We've actually put one of the spots, I think, that people thought might work there has now been filled with exercise equipment on the parade. So I like Councillor Davis, I feel it's reasonable to put it back in the mix, but I think the reasons why it was taken out are just as strong, and in fact stronger now than when we looked at it in the first place. I think it's almost an equity issue. Why do the people of Kensington Gardens, why should they, when they're in walking distance of cricket, rugby, tennis, passive leisure, dog walking, also get a skate park? Is that fair? But I will support the motion.
Right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Henschke?
As I do the question for the administration through the Mayor, have a community wanted, have you been receiving requests for a skate park in Kensington?
I'm not sure the relevance of the question to this debate, but that's really a question for the elected members. Have you been receiving requests for it? But I think it's important for where we are at this minute. This isn't about talking about whether there should be or should not be a skate park within Kensington Park Reserve. It's about whether council has a clean slate when they reconsider the report. That's what this is about.
Sorry, Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I agree with everything that Councillor Piggott has said, and I'll be very happy if in our workshop we are also presented with the option of the wheel park in the Glenside Basin. I think that would be fair for us to consider that as well.
Did you want to say anything or not? Okay.
I need to say that I think once we have the workshop, every location can come into that conversation and nothing should be off the table.
Haven't we got another one that's already off the table, Penfold Park? No. No? No, that was the only one. Okay.
Thank you, Worship. I will support this motion. I didn't support the motion to remove this from the table. I don't think we should be cherry picking and saying it can't go there. I think every park should be considered. So I'm happy to support this.
Councillor Lemon.
I'm happy to support this as well, but I only support this with parks that we actually own at this time. Any ones that we might own at a later time can be considered later.
Councillor Piggott.
Can I ask, that might be Councillor Lemon's wish, is that the case?
We do own that land.
I can confirm that Glenside is now in our ownership and control.
Yeah.
There was a period where we were waiting for the paperwork to go through, where it wasn't technically in our ownership and control, but that's now the case.
So you wish to speak, well, asking a question.
So that leads me to this question. I was a bit concerned when there was a motion, there was a report in our papers some time ago, which was subsequently withdrawn. No caveats on that?
No caveats on what?
The ownership of that piece of land? No caveats in terms of what we can do with it? We can do with it as we wish?
Let's leave that for the discussion at the workshop.
Yeah, so,
okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to expand on that later.
Councillor Piggott, did you have your question? Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Otherwise, I shall go back to the initiator. No, Councillor Carbone? All right. I'll put it to the vote then. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. That means we do not need to pursue the next motion, which is 13.2. So now we move to 13.3. Councillor Davey, 13.3, motion on notice about fencing home.
Thank you, Mayor. I've moved this motion, and it is that a report be brought to Council by the end of February 2022, which addresses the increasing practice of homes adjacent to parks and reserves, removing the long-standing fencing between the private property and the community land, and 2, that the report address the safety issues arising from this practice with and at the interface of public and private property, particularly when present along a watercourse, as well as the issues for equity of public access and those associated with the change of use of the open space. As I've said in the rationale, increasingly across Burnside, houses are being demolished and new homes constructed on land adjacent to council's reserves. on occasion with no fencing being installed between the completed new home and the reserve. This is a significant change of use and is causing some angst when homeowners start using, who live adjacent to the park, start moving furniture onto the reserve and using it as an extension of their own home, so that it becomes, it deters the other park users from use. Some believe this is a very unfair opportunity, not available to all, and is therefore an equitable use of open space. There are also safety issues when creek lines are involved and left unfenced. And I've just handed around everybody a photo of a house just recently renovated on Harris Reserve at Erindale. And I took this afternoon from the reserve. I noticed it when the house was it's recently been sold, and when there was an open inspection, it looked absolutely stunning. It looked like this home had an acre of land. It was, yes, I won't say deceptive, but it led one to believe that there was a huge expanse of land. But it was also incredibly risky. I mean, any child could have run down that lawned area and just a few more metres and into the creek. So I think we need a report on how we can address this. I did raise the issue previously, and I sent a photo around of a house on Kooyong Reserve at Leabrook. There's also another house on Knightsbridge Reserve in Rochester Street where there's no fence there, and there's just temporary fencing at the moment. So I'm not sure of what our rights are in this respect, what our requirements are, how we can negotiate fencing, whose responsibility it is, and why it's not a condition that they replace the fence that they remove. I don't see that we should be bearing the cost, but that's what I see the report providing to us, so that we can be informed and make any necessary decisions. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Turnbull?
I have my right to speak, thank you. Second it.
Councillor Carbone?
Thank you, Worship. We've been down this road before, and I've forgotten the answer that the CEO gave us last time, but I'm going to ask it again. Do we have any powers whatsoever in forcing people to put up fences when they back onto a reserve or when they back onto a creek and so forth?
At this current time, no.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, and then
So if we have no powers whatsoever,
Sorry, hang on, I've got a couple of microphones on. You've turned it off, Councillor Turnbull.
If we have no powers whatsoever, do you see much point in this report?
Through Madam Mayor, what the report may identify...
Sorry, Councillor Carbone, can you just turn yours off? Yeah.
What the report may identify is the absolute number of circumstances and issues we are dealing with, and then that will give Council an indication of whether it feels it needs to pursue the matter further. As it currently stands, though, Council could choose to fence its reserves, but it would be at its cost. And that's the impediment that we've tried to avoid since infinitum. So that's why generally we don't fence our reserves. But this may give us some data to go forward with.
Councillor Jones.
Sorry, just a follow-up question on that, CEO. Matilda Lane in Eastwood, we voted to build a fence and we get to send half the bill to the landowner. So how is it all going to be at our cost?
That wasn't as a reserve, fencing a reserve.
Well, it's a road reserve.
No, different from a reserve. A land reserve with a creek or without a creek.
For the sake of clarity, I might just get Mr. Cooper or Mr. Cant, who is the expert.
Through the Mayor, the previous answer was correct from the Mayor. It's a road reserve, not a reserve, in the instance that Councillor Davey is referring to.
Councillor Lemon.
So I have a question, if I may. So would administration then see that this doesn't cover front fences? where people choose not to have a front fence, run their lawn to the footpath, and then run the lawn to the curb? Does this, or sometimes there isn't even a footpath, so they run their lawn all the way to the curb or their gardens all the way to the curb. Does this cover that? Do you see yourself as having to look at that as well? Or are you just looking at places where people have got a good view?
I must admit, on my first blush of this, I wasn't intending to look at front yards. I find it highly unlikely that a front yard fronts directly onto a reserve. But I'm probably going to look at the reserve in question and then look at whether the property is situated with regard to that.
Councillor Cornish?
A few questions, might be follow-up. Is a creek a reserve?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I might seek clarification from Councillor Davey. My understanding is that's an aspect that Councillor Davey would like included in this report.
So my second question is there an idea of time, money this will cost to provide this report? Because Second Creek, First Creek, Waterfall Gully, there are a lot of houses along these creeks that back onto them that have access to the creek and don't have a fence to stop them from the creek. So can I just understand like how big this issue, this is going to be a huge report. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of properties.
Through you, Madam Mayor, my intention, again, at first blush, reading this, is that it would mainly be a high-level report exploring the principle of the matter, exploring maybe a couple of core examples that can be used to clarify Council's thoughts on the matter. Because bear in mind, at this point in time, I have no budget to do an exhaustive study, and I don't think it would be prudent use to do an exhaustive study at this point in time.
Councillor Davis and then Councillor Henry.
A little bit, I'm of two minds of this. I've been in reserves where they don't have that back fence, and there's a benefit in that it opens up the reserve. It makes it look bigger, it makes it look unimpeded. And on the other hand, you're very cautious about where that line actually ends. And there's a couple in my electorate of Pepper Street, actually, the reserve that sits in front of Henry Martin Square. There's a property there with a tree. And so you kind of imagine that underneath the tree is the resident's property, but then anything else isn't. And so it's kind of this quiet, but it actually looks quite good as well, because you do have the open space. So it's quite, I think it's a good report. And I think I would definitely like to see, in terms of considering the amenity when you look at it, and when you kind of, the visual impact of where you infer that you have a right to access versus when you have a fence. And I think and then there also, I think, would be an intrusion as well of space where you would not want to go too close to that owner's home. Whereas if there's a fence, you can go all the way up to the fence. And potentially what we could look at doing is an alternative to forcing an actual full fence pitch, but a more clear delineation of where you can actually sit. I think it's Rock Reserve going up to Mount Osmond, is that right? Yeah, there's a property on the corner there that has like a stone wall, so you know that anything interior to that is theirs, and so you feel quite comfortable walking right next to it, and you know that they have grass there. But I think if that was actually fenced off, that would make it a lot worth, like it would significantly detract from the amenity of that. So I think it would be helpful potentially for, in this, I'll support this report, I think it's quite good, but to provide information or examples of situations, like in my ward, where potentially you would feel anxious as a user as to where your space is, and then perhaps potentially maybe a compromise position where it could be delineated with, a brick, like a single brick marking or something like that, to then balance that off. But yeah, I would welcome the report. I think it's quite useful. Yes, lasers, and which you cross, you immediately die.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I'm considering just a couple of extra words, or maybe it's an amendment, but to add, if the mover and seconder would consider this, that item 2 require that the report also look at any changes in any policies we have or creation of policies. The intent of the policy to be that wherever we have chunks of land which are beautifully located next to watercourses, that perhaps there could be opportunities for a pathway that council administration identified where a nice walk could be created, and that's set in a policy. So it's there already is a policy, right? So we don't. Yeah. So okay. Well,
I think one of the issues with this is when we start talking about back fences, we then also have to start thinking about side fences, because there are quite a lot of properties on the Hills Face zone that have side fence who do not have side or back fences. So where does this actually stop, and to what value? Most people actually fence off properties when they want to keep kids or dogs in, rather than in that area anyway, rather than people out. So anyway, it's your decision. I have Councillor Hughes next.
I'm not necessarily opposed to the report. I guess I quite frequently walk along this and I think, look at these silly people that haven't put a fence up and I can peer into their backyard. Like, I think it plays both ways, because I look at it and go, it's not them encroaching necessarily on council space, it's I have the right to peer into their backyard, which is I find even more bizarre. So I'm happy to receive the report, but I think there's a number of, Councillor Henschke, your microphone's on, I can hear myself echoing. There's so, as I kind of think about this, there's so many of these examples around that I just wonder whether it's going to come to an outcome that we can have a consistent and reasonable approach, because there's Warland Reserve up in Burnside, which has properties that look out onto that park that I wouldn't necessarily call fenced either. So, you know, but Councillor Davis obviously doesn't have children. He's a bit, I'm a bit cautious about whether I'm going in my yard. Well, not that we know of, but but you know, where you've got kids, they just run them up. They don't have that. Or am I in someone else's yard? So I'm like, if it's not fenced, it's on them as to whether you're pushing the boundaries. As I said, not opposed to getting the report, but I think we may struggle to come to an outcome at the end of the report. So I'll wait to see what the administration come back with.
Councillor Lemon.
Yes, can I draw your attention to the fact that it's 10:22?
Yes, I was about to. Okay, so we just need to finish this one on, and then unfortunately we're going to have to hold the other one until the next meeting.
May I ask a question, just quickly?
Sorry, wait a minute. Actually.
May I ask a question, please? I seem to remember that Harris Reserve was surveyed. I may be wrong, and that this particular owner wouldn't comply with getting a fence. Am I correct in this or not? Right. Yes, because we had issues with another one in Harris Reserve over a similar thing. So what my other question is, how does the council make somebody comply? Can they? Or do they have to pay for the fence themselves?
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, as I said earlier, we can't compel an owner to pay for that fence. If council wishes to put a fence up, they'd have to pay for it at their cost.
Mm-hmm. Right, now Councillor Joe.
It's just a question on the liability issue. We obviously have to fence the wading park, pool, sorry, in Tasmore Park. If a child comes out of this back garden unsupervised and drowns in the creek, are we liable? No. No.
Waterfall Gully, the same as a classic example. Look at all those houses that have no fences against the creek.
Yeah. No,
Anyway,
we've got legal advice on that
is there
previously.
anyone else? Councillor Piggott.
Can I move that the motion be put?
There is a seconder for the motion to be put. All those in favour that the motion be put? 1, 2. Is that up or down, Councillor Henschke? 1, 2, 3. Okay, carried. Sorry, the motion is put. All those in favour? Sorry. What? Was it 6? Sorry, do it again. Those in favour of the motion being put, because it was just the dilly-dallying here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I move that the motion, I will support that the motion be put. All right, call it. Here we go. All right, division's been called. Those in favour? Oh, I can't. What's that? Sorry. What happens now? Yeah, I can. Of course I can. Okay, those in favour were Councillor Henschke. Could you stand, please, those who were in favour of the motion be put? So it's, you're changing mind. Okay, so we've got now Councillor Piggott, Councillor Lemon, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Turnbull and Councillor Dawes. Those against, Councillor Henschke, Councillor Cornish, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Davey, Councillor Davis, Councillor Lemon, Councillor Jones and Councillor Hubel. So what's the count now? I think it's now lost. Right, the motion's lost, so now we go back. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this matter? No, not when it's... I had a casting.
That was a division on your vote. So you should, because we had a vote and it's 6-6.
Yeah. No, I'm getting a governance is saying no. All right.
No, but that was a division.
It's okay. Yes.
No, on the mayor's vote. 3 minutes.
No. We got 3 minutes.
Can I summarise?
Yes, please.
Thank you, everybody, for your input. Thank you, everybody, for your input. This does raise some anomalies, and I would appreciate, as the CEO has outlined, that we do turn our minds to the issue with a high-level report, which gives us an indication of what capacity we've got to address this issue. I think there might possibly, as Councillor Jones has raised, there might be liability issues for us. So I note that the fence that is just around the corner from this, which was put in place only a couple of years ago by council, is a beautiful black metallic fence that prevents anyone falling into the creek. So I think we've got some historic anomalies, and if we can't address it, perhaps the report could recommend how we might change it, make some recommendations to change the legislation. Thank you. I hope you'll support.
Those in favour? Those against? The motion was carried. I will close, unless, is there any urgent business? I'll just make a point that wish happy birthday to Councillor Dawes, whose birthday is tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, 59, yeah. Take off 10 years. 10:27 p.m. Thank you for your attention.